Hello and welcome to the Megacast by Actual Tech Media. On today's event, you'll be learning about cloud strategies and solutions. This is a hot topic. Every IT organization out there is either already leveraging the cloud or considering leveraging it in some way. And along your path to cloud, you're going to have questions and you're going to need innovative solutions. On the Megacast, you'll hear from our experts at Rubrik, Veeam, Incorda, Nutanix, Duo, Faction, and StrongDM. Now, before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about today's event. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as your moderator along with Scott Becker of Actual Tech Media. As always on the Megacast, we have a mega lineup of prizes. I'll be talking about those here in just a moment. But first, I want to point out that we encourage your questions on this event. You can ask your questions there in the questions pane. We even have a best question prize to help encourage those questions, and I'll be talking about that here in just a moment. I welcome all the hellos and good mornings from across the United States and around the world, but we also want your technical questions. And I'll also have some poll questions for you along the way. We also want this to be a social event. You can socialize the event right there on Twitter using the Twitter icon on your audience console, and the hashtag for today will be automatically appended. I also want to call your attention to the Handouts tab. It's there that you'll find hand-selected resources by each of today's expert presenters. I'm talking about trial links, ebooks, solution briefs, and more. The prize lineup on the Megacast today is 5 Microsoft Surface Laptop 4s. These are some amazing Microsoft Surface laptops. And if that wasn't enough, we've got Amazon $500 gift cards after each presentation on the Megacast. Of course, you must be live in attendance to qualify for the prize drawing and meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions that you can find there in the Handouts tab. And as I mentioned, we also have our best question prize for an additional Amazon $50 gift card, one for each of the Q&A sessions on the Megacast today. That's a lot more gift cards. Prize winners will be selected and contacted after the event. All grand prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and you always have the option to make a donation to a selected charity. We've donated thousands of dollars over the years to the charities you see here on the screen. If you win a prize and you'd like to help someone less fortunate, we would love to help you do that. The hashtag for the Megacast today on Twitter is ATM Megacast. You can follow Actual Tech Media and me, your moderator, David M. Davis, as well. I'll be monitoring Twitter throughout the event and commenting or retweeting and following anyone who is using the hashtag, so thank you in advance. You can subscribe to all the Actual Tech Media social channels, YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast right there in your audience console, as well as our LinkedIn channel where we post all of our latest and greatest content. Also, I want to call your attention to the Handouts tab. It's there that you'll find a link to the gorilla.guide website. You can download free, easy-to-read enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. Yes, they work on your Kindle or iPad or mobile device, and it's a great way to stay up to date on technology. Another cool way to win a prize is to refer an IT friend or coworker to Actual Tech Media's online events, and you both could win a $300 Amazon gift card. Those prize drawings are held monthly, and we promise not to spam your IT friends or coworkers. We'll send them a list to our upcoming events. If they don't respond, we'll send them one more reminder to join, and then we won't bother them after that. Again, there's a link to the referral site in your audience console on the Handouts tab, and at the end of the Megacast, you'll be automatically redirected to our events referral page. All right, so with our housekeeping information out of the way, I'm going to now turn on my camera and kick off our Megacast keynote interview. All right, it's now my pleasure to be chatting with my friend Elias Knaser, who is the Chief of Research at EK Media Group. Hey, Eli, how you doing?
I'm doing great, David. How are you?
Doing excellent. It's good to be chatting with you again after all these years. I think we first met when we did a VMware training course way back in 2007.
Good old days.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Since then, I know you went on, you did some amazing things around cloud consulting, cloud architecture, And let's see, I see here you were a research vice president at Gartner for 7 years, focusing on private, hybrid, and public cloud computing. You've been very busy, written 6 books, created dozens of courses, video training courses on AWS, VMware, cloud computing, and much more. You've been writing at Forbes. And lately, you've got your own YouTube channel, which has got some awesome cloud-related content on it. We're going to be talking about that more in just a little bit. But first, let's jump into the topic here of cloud. I know that's one of your favorite topics, especially on your YouTube channel. But we'll just start off, and let's say that I'm an IT professional at one of the many medium-sized companies represented here on today's event. We've got all of our data and applications on premises. We're interested in moving to the cloud, but we really don't know where to start. What kind of tips can you give us, Eli?
Yeah, great question. So I would say the first place to start is to actually have a strategy document. The reason a strategy document is important for organizations that are starting their journey to the cloud is it gives you an opportunity to structure and organize your thoughts. But most importantly, it also affords you the opportunity to answer the question, why? A lot of organizations go to cloud without answering the question why, or it becomes an IT project moving to the cloud, kind of like, hey, in the good old days, we were going to talk about, should we move from VMware to Hyper-V or from Hyper-V to VMware? A lot of organizations treat the cloud similarly in terms of, well, we're just going to move from on-premises to the cloud without really having a business driver. So having that document begins to structure things like your vision, the business drivers, why are you moving to cloud, right? And try to avoid the pitfalls of just putting all of the IT business drivers. Like try to avoid putting availability and scalability and all of these terms that really only mean things to IT, and try to bring in why cloud will be important to the business. I think that's the first step, is a solid cloud strategy document.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very wise, very smart. Start with the why. I mean, I'm sure too many companies out there have moved to the cloud because the CFO saw an ad in the Wall Street Journal and you can get cloud for 2 cents a minute. So boom, we're going to the cloud.
That's right.
But there needs to be a lot more strategy to it than that. So you alluded to some of the pitfalls that companies fall into. I'm curious, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot when it comes to cloud. I would say the few that come up often is when you're trying to move to the cloud, your mentality, your mindset has to change. If you try to apply the same things that you've applied on premises in the cloud, you're going to get limited results. For example, I'll give you some technical examples here. If you've got a web server farm on premises that consists of 20 web servers, if you simply lift and shift it to the cloud, you're going to find that there's limited cost savings, limited optimization that you're having with it. You've essentially, again, V'd it from one place to another. Whereas the ideal way would be to deploy it into an auto scaling group, maybe put in 2 or 3 servers and build automation around it and the right monitoring metrics so that if the auto scaling group's utilization hits, let's say 70 or 80%, deploy a new server. If it falls below a certain threshold, remove a server. Doing that, you've optimized the workload as you're moving it. So the skills gap, I would say, is the number one challenge for organizations as they're moving to the cloud, is not having the right skills to properly architect in the cloud. And the takeaway from skills is not having the right skills in the cloud can be very costly. Your technical decisions have an immediate cost implication. So that's important to also remember and understand. The other thing that I would say is obsessing over cost. So IT over the years, cost has become an obsession. Like anything you say, well, my budgets are limited. Well, it's a budget. It's always been limited. It's always going to be limited. So those two things become crucial to avoiding pitfalls in the cloud.
Okay, excellent points. And I really love the point there about the skills gap, because I think that's something that too many companies forget about. They assume, well, you can run your VMware infrastructure, so let's move everything to AWS, and isn't it pretty much the same?
That's right.
And the answer is, as you know, is no. And so that's why I know your courses like over at Pluralsight have been super popular around AWS and other topics. And then what about when companies move to the cloud? Is kind of everything covered? Like you put it in the cloud and you don't need any more security or data protection or authentication because the cloud just takes care of all that stuff, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, no, I wish it was how that works, right? So you mentioned a couple of really important topics. So it's important, especially when we talk about data protection, for organizations to understand that at the end of the day, it's your data, it's your responsibility. So whether it's on premises, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's at the edge, regardless of where the data is, you are responsible for having a data protection strategy that's end to end, especially if you're using SaaS services. So for example, if some customers are using Microsoft 365, yes, Microsoft offers you backup and recovery capabilities. But what you want to pay attention to are the T's and C's. You want to look at the fine print and look at, well, how, what type of data are they backing up? How quickly can they restore this data? Should you have to restore it, right? So if you're a law firm, law firms live and die by their emails. If Microsoft says, hey, we'll restore your data within a week, that law firm can potentially be out of business, potentially for taking so long. So it's important to have a strategy and to even back up your IaaS, your PaaS, and especially SaaS. It's your data, it's your responsibility. Security is the same thing. When you're migrating to the cloud, you have to understand that, things like two-factor authentication become important. Things like, single sign-on become important. How are you going to have, integration for security across all of the different apps? So if you're on a SaaS layer, but also IaaS and PaaS, security becomes important. Cost optimization tools become important. You're going to be in a multi-cloud world. So you're going to have AWS, potentially you're going to have Azure or Google. How are you going to do cost optimization across all of them? How are you going to do security, data protection? So all of these become crucial when you're looking at it also, not just from a single cloud provider lens, but from a multi-cloud provider lens. These tools become very important.
Yeah, excellent points all around. I mean, and I even was thinking when you're talking about the Microsoft example, Microsoft offers data protection, but should you be storing your data in Microsoft and using it for data protection as well? Maybe you need to get that offsite or put it in another cloud or whatever. All very important things to think about, I'm sure, in the strategy document. And so I know we're running out of time here, but I want to give the folks out there on the event a little bit more information on if they want to find more from Elias Canese, or if they want to get more tidbits of your wise cloud advice, what should they do?
Well, the best place is to go to my YouTube channel, subscribe. What we're doing on this YouTube channel is we're trying to do one question, one answer in 20 minutes or less. So we're going to take common questions that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. How do I design a cloud strategy? How do I design an exit strategy? How do I assess which applications are good candidates to move to the cloud? What are the best practices? These are all questions that are on the job types of questions that IT professionals are asked. We try to answer those 15 minutes or less. We're trying to build a community, so join the family. Help me grow it, and make sure you comment. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, we placed a link to Elias's YouTube channel there in the handouts tab of everyone's audience console. If you want to check that out right now, just click on that link and you can go over here and subscribe to Elias's channel. And I love some of these topics because they're so just applicable to every company out there who's considering, moving to the cloud. And then you've also got, of course, some great fun videos on here, like the one where you talk about top 10 cloud certifications.
That's right.
Yeah, just recently posted a few days ago. So some excellent content from Elias over on YouTube. Eli, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. See you soon.
I've just brought up the first poll of today's Megacast. That poll is on the screen, and it's what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? Of course, today we're specifically talking about cloud. So cloud solutions, maybe adding more cloud-based services or solutions around cloud, like Elias and I chatted about. You have to have security, data protection, visibility, so many different solutions in the cloud to help make it really kind of a complete offering for your company. So the question on the screen is, what's your time frame around taking some action? And thank you to everyone who posted all the excellent comments and questions here during the kickoff and the keynote of today's event. Elias and I will be responding to these here as quickly as we can. Some great questions came in during the keynote, so thank you so much for those. And of course, thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll. Let's go ahead and kick off the Megacast here with our first presenters. I'm excited now to bring in Joe Kelly, Cloud Solutions Architect, and Brian Mislavsky, Technical Product Manager, both at Rubrik. Joe and Brian, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Joe Kelly again. I'm a Cloud Solutions Architect with Rubrik. We have Brian Mislavsky as well. He's a Technical Product Manager at Rubrik. I'll be going through a few slides here, and then we'll jump into a demo that Brian will present. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so in case you don't know, Rubrik is a cloud data management company. What that means is not only do we back up and protect workloads on premises and in the cloud, but we also enable our customers to really get more out of their data. We've been around for a little over 7 years now with well over 1,600 employees and over 2,500 customers across the globe. We are one of the fastest growing enterprise companies in Silicon Valley history. And as of this year, Gartner placed us again as a leader in the Magic Quadrant with the best completeness of vision. So why are companies adopting Rubrik? We make backup recovery simple, so both from an operational perspective and an architectural perspective. However, it goes deeper than that. We also understand what's top of mind for our customers, so whether it's to drive operational efficiency, ransomware protection, security, governance, or cloud mobility, our product really solves for all these value drivers. We are hearing from our customers that there are really three major imperatives for their data as they proceed through their own transformation, digital transformation. First thing is they want to modernize and automate data management so they can scale better. The second is they are on a path to the cloud like most of us. They're moving from on-premises to a single cloud to a hybrid or multi-cloud, and they want their data management solution to be able to support and scale with them along that path. And third thing is they want to get more from their data, right? They want to make sure that their data is compliant with regulations, and that most of all, they want their data to be secure from ransomware. We're also hearing from customers that their legacy data protection systems are just not prepared for the future. So often they're complex, and over the years they've wound up with hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs to maintain. These same legacy systems suffer from slow and inconsistent recovery, and they often don't leverage advancements in instant recovery, and not to mention they can be extensive. And so modernizing and automating their data protection solution is where Rubrik customers start getting immediate benefits. So if you look at the backup and recovery space, not much has really changed in the last 20 or 30 years. You have large levels of complexity across multiple components, from backup software to server infrastructure to those processes that just don't scale to meet your infrastructure requirements. Unfortunately, this legacy technology acts as a blocker to any kind of modernization initiatives you have in place. As you migrate to the cloud, this architecture begins to break down. It does not natively integrate with the cloud. It's not built for automation. It's typically insecure by design. And so our vision was to modernize backup, recovery, archive, and DR. And really the success of our platform was enabled by these three principles. One being native integration with the cloud, two, leveraging automation and orchestration, and then three, data security no matter where that data lives. And so what we do is we take everything you see and converge that into a single software fabric that's built for the cloud. Easy to use, scale, automate, and inherently secure by design. And so as a result, we help our customers save on costs by increasing their productivity, reducing downtime, and natively integrating with AWS, Azure, and GCP for more efficient operations. So how do we do it? Everything about Rubrik is centered around ease of use and simplicity at scale. We're kind of gone are the days of scheduling backup jobs, blackouts, and exclusions. Rubrik's going to automate the way you do backups with our SLA-based policy engine. And so that's going to dramatically reduce the hours you spend hand-holding your backups. Second, again, we are built for the cloud. We built a ton of innovations in the cloud with archival, instantiation, and general protection. And we built in automation into every aspect of our solution. So we have robust APIs and SDKs that allow you to integrate Rubrik with your other tools and workflows. And then lastly, everything on Rubrik is going to be encrypted and secure. So with Rubrik, once data is written, it can never be changed. That makes the data secure and immutable to ransomware attacks. So here's how it works. Just state how often you want to take backups. That would be your frequency. And then how long you need to keep on. That would be your retention. Then decide when you want to archive or replicate and where you want to archive and replicate. And so we have one policy that effectively covers the entire data lifecycle. You can assign these SLAs across on-prem and cloud, and as environments scale, Rubrik's going to automatically discover and apply those policies to those resources. So from a cloud perspective, our customers are using Rubrik to accelerate their cloud usage. So from left to right here, we have what's referred to as Cloud Out, which is Cloud Archive. And so we typically see customers use Rubrik to use Cloud First for long-term data retention. They send and store data cost effectively in the cloud with the ability to be able to search that data from on-premises. Second is Cloud On. So once that data is in the cloud, customers within that archive, customers can instantiate a cloud environment through automated conversion of VMDKs or VHDs into native cloud disk formats. That third column there, that refers to that cloud workload protection. That's under the context of Cloud Cluster. The Cloud Cluster is essentially our Rubrik cloud data management software running on a virtual instance within GCP, Azure, and AWS. So there's several kind of use cases as it relates to Cloud Cluster and where it would fit. Perhaps you're running databases in guests where more granular protection mechanisms are needed, so think like log-based backups. Or maybe you just want Cloud Cluster to be a replication target for your primary cluster, or Rubrik cluster that's on premises. Maybe you're an AVS or VMC customer. Then Cloud Cluster is how we would protect those workloads. Or maybe you're a federal or dark site customer that can't utilize our SaaS-based offering, Polaris, which I'll talk about here in a minute. This solution, Cloud Cluster, is generally an agent-based solution using our RBS agent, except in the case of AVS and VMC. And some of the recent advancements with Cloud Cluster allow us to write directly to object-based storage to reduce costs. If you want to take a look at Rubrik CDM, you can go out to Azure and the AWS Marketplace, and you can grab a copy of that and be to your own devices, I guess. Last but not least, on the right there, we have Cloud Native Protection. This is via our Polaris SaaS-based platform. So once you're up and running in AWS, we provide this native protection as a service. So we can initiate and orchestrate via cloud native compute, native compute and storage APIs from the cloud provider themselves. For hybrid cloud enterprises, Rubrik is going to abstract away a lot of the complexity of managing those data protection solutions for on-premise and cloud environments. So we've designed our solutions so that data is owned and always under control, and it never leaves your account. Just a little bit more on how we intelligently use data in the cloud. So we do source-side, dedupe compression, first full, incremental forever. So we're only sending needed data to the cloud while maintaining knowledge of that information stored and where, so retrieval is going to be quick and without added time and hassle. And so like I said earlier, if we see not only the data but the metadata as well, so the where, the when, and the how, and this is what lets us get more out of that data. So one of those areas of getting more is to help mitigate data risk. So the first area is ransomware mitigation. Some of the issues we're seeing with ransomware, when it comes to ransomware recovery, it turns out your backup is really no longer your last line of defense. You often assume that your backup data was actually backed up, but it turns out that it's just as vulnerable to cyber attack. Moreover, one of the biggest problems with ransomware is that it often takes hours, if not days, to figure out what the blast radius is or how many files are affected. And so recovery becomes virtually impossible. Figuring out exactly what point to recover from, finding the affected files, and being able to restore across your entire organization with a legacy solution can be impossible. And so we've introduced really a new way. Actually, did I skip the slide here? Yep, sorry. So actually, we've introduced a new way to help solve the ransomware problem by way of our Radar solution. We can detect anomalies, discover files that have been altered or deleted or added because of ransomware, and then we let you easily find them and restore them with one click. Recovery from ransomware is super easy in this case, and with Rubrik's immutable storage, you're always assured of having an unaffected copy of your data. And then the final area I'll mention is data governance. Rubrik can discover sensitive, personally identifiable information and information subject to regulations that's hiding in your unstructured data. So this helps you create an inventory to support current and future data privacy regulations, and even the ability to be able to customize policies and analyzers to your own unique requirements. So similar to ransomware recovery, we leverage your existing backup data, which ultimately allows you to drive more from that data. All right. So some of the next steps here, you can head over to rubrik.com for all the great content that we have available over there for our solutions and products. Forward 2021, which is our customer-based conference, was a few months ago. You can go out there. Registration is required, but it is free. So please go out there, check, and take a look at some of those sessions that took place during Forward itself. We also have Camp Rubrik. You can get hands-on experience with our guided demos from some of our best and brightest to kind of see where we're headed. And then thirdly, available on the AWS and Azure Marketplace, you can test our software, our Rubrik Cloud Cluster. You wouldn't be able to test our Polaris-based offering because that is SaaS-based, but you would be able to test Cloud Cluster. GCP, Cloud Cluster on GCP Marketplace is coming in the first half of 2022. And then finally, our backup modernization assessment. So these are performed through selected partners, but it will walk you through some of the cost savings, ransomware risk analysis, and modernization benefits you can gain from our solution. All right, now we'll jump into a demo with Brian. Brian?
Hey, how's everyone doing? Today I am going to give a quick demo of our Polaris solution and cover some of the topics that Joe mentioned in his slides. So let me get my... All right, so this is Polaris GPS. This is a central dashboard where we have a single place to see all events, reports, a quick hit top-level view across your entire environment, both on-prem and off-prem. I'm just going to go in order across the top. Polaris is a central place. Again, this is pure SaaS. Polaris is a location that lets you manage your entire inventory. So for those that have physical bricks across multiple locations, this is a single place to view all your Rubrik clusters, regardless of where they are. You can actually drill down into them, get some metadata, get some actual data and metrics as to the actual performance and capacity reports of your bricks. Taking that one step further, and Joe's presentation covered a lot of cloud native workloads and protection and the direction where Rubrik is headed. So under inventory, you can now fully see the full gamut of platforms and applications and services that Rubrik is protecting. So for example, from the single place in Polaris, you can see Microsoft 365, AWS, both EC2 and RDS, your Azure, GCP, as well as your on-prem SQL, Windows, Linux, VMware, Nutanix, HV, so on and so forth. So this is a single place to see everything in your environment from a hybrid cloud perspective. The one thing that's really important here is, for example, let's drill down into AWS EC2. In this demo environment, we have a single account, we have multiple instances. Now, what happens if you have multiple accounts? Traditionally, you have to log in each account, manage protection, do things. If you have internal automation tools, you'll have to make sure that you account for them accordingly. With Polaris, we have the ability to implement something called global SLAs, which are similar to our on-premises SLAs, but in a much grander scale. You can take one and actually create something called tag rules. So now, if you were to have, in this example, multiple AWS accounts, regardless of region, location, so on and so forth, you can create a rule based on the tag associated with them and apply an SLA. I'm not going to actually create one here. But what will happen is you can actually assign it directly to that tag, meaning any EC2 instance in any account that's seen by Polaris will inherit that baseline protection according to that SLA based on its tag. So when Polaris does a discovery of an account, it will actually pick it up, say, okay, and apply the SLA. Going back one further, same thing will hold true for GCP, vSphere, any other protected environment. Now, when we get to SLAs, these are actually the really powerful tool for that we can view from Polaris. So we have the ability to create these global SLAs. What does that mean? You can create a protection guideline that actually adheres to business rules. So regardless of what the data you're trying to protect is, you can create a multi-platform SLA. So for example, if I were to create a VMware and a EC2 SLA, take it once a day for seven days. You can create some archival settings here, depending on what they are. Same thing with replication. If you configure replication, you can actually set where you want to send it to, how long you want to keep it for at the replicated site, advanced settings for virtual machines. Give it a name, and that's it. So if you were to give it a name, if you created an SLA that adheres to business logic and business rules, you can actually apply it regardless of where you are, what it is you're trying to protect, so on and so forth. So global SLAs are really that important and key part of that automation story as to where we're going to protect data across your entire infrastructure, whether it's on-prem, off-prem, native SaaS applications. For example, Microsoft 365, you can actually manage your, again, live demo, SharePoint, Teams, Exchange, OneDrive, View, everything you have, protected in the same single pane of glass that you do with the rest of your standard infrastructure. Events from Polaris, you can actually see all events, again, same thing across your entire environment, regardless of what they are, where they are, filter, sort, so on and so forth. Reporting, this is actually really key as well. You can actually pull compliance reports. I want to see how my data is being protected according to SLAs that we've defined across my entire infrastructure, both on-prem and off-prem. You can customize reports and export them, the pre-canned ones, and then there's some additional ones as well. One thing as well that's really cool with Polaris and really powerful is this would be like search. If I were to search for something that Joe did, I can actually see any and all resources that either have his name, a tag, so on and so forth, in there and across on-prem environments, off-prem environments, so on and so forth. So that global search is there the same way it is on-prem with our solutions. Next things I wanted to cover real quick, Joe mentioned ransomware. So he touched on Radar. When Rubrik protects data, we do take a look at metadata and keep track of changes, behaviors, patterns in the data that's being protected. When we know that when the machine learning engine learns of something that's out of the ordinary, it will effectively declare an anomaly. Here you go. This example is it's detected some anonymous file system activity. You can actually drill down, see what happened, when it happened, what files were impacted. You can export a list. Sorry, I'm zooming a little bit. You can export a list. You can actually investigate the snapshot, which means you can export a snapshot of the affected data or impacted files for further analysis later, as well as collect an audit log. Again, this is all SaaS. The only thing Rubrik keeps track of is metadata. All data still resides in customer-owned accounts and your on-prem infrastructure, if that's the case. Now, what about the data that you don't know about? So that's where Sonar comes in. Sonar provides us the ability, again, pure SaaS using analyzers based on some predefined guidelines. For example, well, I'm trying to get the little mouse over to work. You have a PII from a U.S. perspective, credit card, social securities, UK, HIPAA, financial data, so on and so forth. What this will actually do is, in the same vein as radar, keep track of data, of metadata in your backups, and actually scan for those things using what we call analyzers. So for example, this backup we found 52,000 sensitive hits. It'll actually show you the files, the individual files that were impacted, what the data was. You can download a list for further processing, so on and so forth, and then take action on them. You can see what users did have access to it, any operations that have occurred, permissions, so on and so forth. Another added benefit for Sonar is you can actually create custom analyzers. So if you have internal corporate data or IDs or any other names that you'd like to create a regex for, you can put that in and create an analyzer and search your data. So you're not limited to the classifications that we have here. That's a really high-level overview of Polaris from a demo perspective. We could deep dive into any topic that people want to cover on a further date. But with that, we can go to some questions. I see there's a few of them.
Let's see. First question I did want to ask you comes from Chad. He's asking about how will Rubrik's new partnership with Microsoft impact the current and future customers?
Brian, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it's obviously positive. They have a lot of faith in Rubrik, as we do. I think you'll start seeing more partnerships and alignment in regards to solutions moving forward, and I think it's pretty evident right now with our large customer base. We have Azure, AWS, Google, but I think that you'll start seeing some solutions that are hitting Microsoft first. For example, with our 6.0 release, we introduced immutability, the ability to natively integrate with Microsoft Azure immutable storage. So we can actually take the immutability storage from on-prem to off-prem for your archives. So things like that.
Excellent. Another question here comes from Sharon, who's asking, is Rubrik doing zero trust data management?
They are, yeah. Our architecture is kind of modeled after the zero trust implementation model from NIST, and so we do provide that immutable file system. It's called Atlas, and so once that data is actually written to that file system, it can never be changed. So in effect, it is immutable. So we do follow that zero trust model.
Very nice. Let's see. Next question. Charu is asking, what sort of automation are you using, and which one is more convenient to work on Google, Azure, or AWS?
Yeah. We are API first, so we do have SDKs available on our public GitHub. You can leverage things PowerShell, Python, Terraform, and you can actually automate on-prem CVM clusters as well as cloud clusters, and I believe there's a Polaris Terraform module coming out, if it's not already there. But in addition to that, the ability to leverage global SLAs and tag rules and things to that effect, at least from a Polaris standpoint, you have some native automation built into it, and we're always looking to improve upon that too.
And I would say all our partnerships with the cloud providers that we support are very convenient to work with.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm afraid we're running out of time in our live Q&A here. There's a lot more electronic questions. If folks want to get started with Rubrik, what do you recommend?
Definitely head out to www.rubrik.com. That'll be a great place for you to get started. You can certainly get a hold of us, myself, Joe Kelly, and Brian Mislowski, and we can get you engaged with the account team in your area.
Excellent. All right. Well, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much, Joe and Brian. Great presentation. Really love the cool demo as well. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, David.
I've just brought up the poll question for everyone out there on the screen. This is, what additional information would you like about Rubrik? We do want to get your feedback. The Rubrik team values your feedback. And so we appreciate your feedback there on that poll question. And I will leave that up while I announce the first prizes of today's Megacast event. All right, looks like we have an Amazon $500 gift card. This one going to Fernando Giacino from New Jersey. Congratulations, Fernando Giacino from New Jersey. And our first grand prize, this is going out to Matt Havlick from Nebraska. Congratulations. You won our first grand prize, which is a Microsoft Surface Laptop 4. Congratulations. And we still have 4 more of those to give out on the Megacast today, and of course a lot more other prizes. Thank you so much for everyone, to everyone who joined the event today, and for everyone who responded to the poll. We appreciate that feedback. But it's time to keep the Megacast moving, and I'm excited now to bring in our next presenter. Welcome Sam Nichols, Director for Public Cloud Product Marketing at Veeam. Hey Sam, thanks for being on.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure where you're at, but it's still good morning for me, but thanks for having me.
Good morning, and take it away, Sam.
Awesome. Okay, let's advance these slides here. All right, so the topic for today is very much cloud focused to help you guys out with cloud strategies and solutions that fit in with that. But what I really wanted to talk to you about was owning your data across any cloud. And the majority of you probably know who Veeam is, and yes, we're a data protection, data management company. So what does ownership really have to do with that? And hopefully I'm going to make that clear over the course of, I guess, the next few slides as we talk about some challenges and maybe what a perfect world would look like when it comes to managing and owning our cloud data in a hybrid and multi-cloud environment. So on the topic of hybrid and multi-cloud, I wanted to take a look at the realities where we are right now. 92% of organizations have gone multi-cloud. 80% of those are hybrid cloud, and 41% have been running production in the public cloud for at least 2 years. So, there's been a lot of talk for, a decade now around, hybrid cloud, but it is absolutely here now. Everyone's taking advantage of it and reaping the benefits. And, it's pretty clear to see why when we take a look at some of the cloud advantages, why folks are doing that, right? The cloud offers us unparalleled flexibility. We literally have hundreds of services to choose from across tens of providers. AWS alone has more than 200 services on offer, from databases and compute to, many other platforms and software as a service options. And all of those services are available incredibly quickly to you, right? You have near instant provisioning of that service that you need right then and there. So we don't have to go through the old legacy process of procuring and managing and maintaining and upgrading hardware and software and networking equipment. It's all right there with the swipe of a credit card. It's also incredibly elastic, right? Our needs change on a daily basis. Right? Sometimes we might need more compute, more storage. The next day, the demands might not be as heavy. So we have that elasticity to scale our needs up and down as and when we need to. And that really helps out with the next point, right? Which is around cost, right? We can transform those large capital expenditure transactions into much more manageable pay-as-you-go operational expenditures. And that's pay-as-you-go, but pay-as-you-use as well. Right? So you're only paying for what you use, provided that you've got it set up right. And then the final piece is around resilience, right? These cloud vendors offer some very, very high numbers when it comes to availability, up to 11 nines of availability if you kind of architect your environment in line with well-architected best practices to kind of get you to those numbers. But these would be almost impossible to achieve on premises. And resiliency is a really interesting thing to talk about, because I think availability and backup sometimes get conflated with one another. And when you have these ridiculously available services, like, what's the need for a backup? And that's the next piece that I wanted to capture, right? Which is, you do still need a backup, right? So Microsoft, AWS, even Google have their own data protection capabilities built within their platform. And they also have first-party solutions available to you in AWS backup and Azure backup. And the reasons for needing a backup are numerous, but they have these great things called shared responsibility models that help us understand as we transition to the public cloud and transition to varying as-a-service options, infrastructure, platform, software, we are transitioning varying degrees of responsibility to that public cloud provider, right? So you can see on-prem, obviously, we're responsible for everything. IaaS, a few of the pieces go away, so on and so forth. But the one thing that really holds true across all of this, and this is Microsoft's shared responsibility model, but they also the same thing, is that the information and data that you put in the public cloud is yours, and it is your responsibility to protect and secure that. So absolutely, you're going to want to architect your public cloud environments in line with well-architected best practices, what you expect your service level objectives and uptime to be, but you also need to back up that data, because that resiliency, that availability is ultimately met by replicating data across different pieces of infrastructure within the same data center, different pieces of, or different data centers spread across different geographic locations. And replication is great for that availability piece, but anything that happens to that source piece is going to be translated over to the replica. So you accidentally delete something, you suffer a ransomware attack, there is corruption of the data, that is ultimately going to be replicated across those regions. And yes, it's still going to be available, but it's not, what you want is not going to be available. So you always need to be protecting that data in the public cloud, just as we've done on premises for a number of years. So there's a number of solutions that you have on options on hand to protect all of your environment, both in the cloud and outside of the cloud, like being an on-premises data center, right? So how this kind of typically shapes up is that you've got, let's call it legacy backup. So, kind of those old guard vendors that, had their time in the sun in the data center. And that's great for those physical machines, particularly. But that legacy backup doesn't succeed with modern applications, and it certainly doesn't stretch across the cloud successfully. Successfully is the key point there, right? We can take an agent that is designed and purpose-built for physical machines, and we can apply that to a virtual machine in the data center if we want. Or we can apply it to a workload that's running in the cloud. But an agent-based protection isn't always going to be the best option for protecting workloads other than physical machines, right? There's a lot of overhead, that causes a lot of I/O, there's management, deployment of that into each and every single instance, managing, maintaining it, upgrading it. Agents just don't necessarily fit in, and they're not aware of the environment that they're in either. So then that causes us to look at, okay, well, let's keep that for our data center. It's doing just fine there, but as we accelerate our cloud adoption, we need to protect that data there. What have we got an option there? And that's the platform native backup, right? And this is, again, great. There's many options on hand. You can even just manually take snapshots of different instances in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. You can script that, or you can use those first-party solutions. But the problem with that is those solutions are limited to a single platform or a single cloud. So that starts to introduce a problem, because now we're having to manage multiple tool sets from multiple different vendors. And that can ultimately decrease efficiencies, increase costs. It can cause retention policy gaps. We miss something that needs to be protected. And none of these talk to one another. And lastly, you start to lose that ownership and control over your data. Because if it is just specific to that platform, that data is going to be locked into that platform. So, your organization's, transformation strategy is a constantly evolving, never static strategy, right? So who knows what the future is going to hold for applications that live on-prem now, applications that live in one cloud now. Maybe we want to bring them back on premises. Maybe we want to move them to another cloud. Maybe they change in some other unforeseen way that we just don't know yet. But if it is locked into that, it's ultimately going to hinder those transformative initiatives. And then finally on that piece, I guess, is sometimes those options can be restrictive and feature lacking. So, if you are using just like snapshots, native snapshots of an EC2 instance, let's say, your recovery options are typically pretty limited. have to recover the entire machine. There's no like file level recovery options. In terms of where you store those snapshots, you store it in EBS, 5 cents per gig per month. There are dozens of different storage options available within AWS that are much, much more cost effective than that. And AWS will actively help you try to be more cost effective and get your bill down. So being able to, maybe transition that off onto Amazon S3, which is less than half that cost, all the way down to things like S3 Glacier Deep Archive, which are literally fractions of a cent per gigabyte per month. So again, ultimately, we've got options, right? But typically those options are from multiple different vendors, multiple different consoles. They don't talk to one another. We lose control and ownership of our data as they get locked into different platforms. So it kind of begs the question, like, what else is out there, right? What would a hybrid cloud data protection utopia look like? All these happy little people with the puppy, they're so great. How can we be like that? How can we have a puppy like that? So I kind of just posed this question to, myself and a number of Veeam users and non-Veeam users, and just kind of looked at what do these folks really want. First piece is broad native support, right? So that's that native backup and recovery that's purpose-built for the environment that is in need of protection, right? We already discussed that the way that you protect a virtual machine is very different to the way that you protect a physical machine. The way that you may protect a cloud instance in AWS is different to how you do in Azure, definitely different to how you do on-premises. Other modernized workloads like SaaS applications, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, containerized workloads managed by Kubernetes, they all operate wildly different and all have wildly different data protection mechanisms that are best suited to those environments. So what customers ultimately want is purpose-built native backup and recovery for that specific environment. And they kind of already have that, but again, it comes from multiple different vendors, multiple different consoles, so on and so forth. The next piece is around like modular flexibility, right? So if we do start to go to a vendor, we don't want to have to consume the entirety of their platform just to get the one little piece that we actually need, right? If we're only interested in protecting AWS, let's just say, but the entirety of the platform also comes with, a heavy overhead, on-premises servers, yada, 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 that ultimately isn't going to fit our needs. So having that non-prescriptive modular flexibility to pick and choose the different components from that platform as and when you need it is an absolute must. Should have put this slide next. But it's around centralized management, right? So again, if we've got that broad native support, how do we centrally manage that under a single view for all of those environments, right? So again, it may be multiple tool sets, but provided that you have that centralized control management visibility from one UI, that is going to eliminate those multiple tool sets. It's going to stop that fragmentation of management that again is driving the efficiencies lower and your costs higher. And then the final piece, again, is around ownership and control of data. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, 10 days' time, a year's time, 10 years' time, but ultimately data is the lifeblood of our organization. And if that is locked into a platform that isn't serving the organization best, we are going to want to move that. And if it is locked into a specific platform, it is going to hinder those initiatives. So having that complete ownership and control over that data to move it across any infrastructure at any time as we see fit, as our organization's needs and requirements evolve, is absolutely critical. So you guys might call this data mobility, data portability. It's ultimately kind of what you guys want. When we look at some of Veeam's data protection report research, it is showing just how important that movement, that mobility of data is climbing up the ranks. It's all three ways are in the top 9 in terms of list of importance, right? The ability to kind of what you would expect, move data from on-premises into the cloud, the ability to move data from one cloud to another cloud, but also the ability to move data from the cloud back on premises. And that kind of sounds a little bit antithetical to, what we are seeing as a trend in the industry, but it's absolutely happening. More than 50% of organizations have brought data back from the cloud, whether that's because they developed it in the cloud and they already intended to run it on premises, whether that's because they migrated it to the cloud, ran it there, it didn't meet their needs, requirements, it was too expensive, so they brought it back, or in a more typical disaster recovery situation, right, where we kind of knew we're going to bring it back anyway, but it kind of falls into that, and it is the smaller segment of those three. So again, helping you understand, the 4 things that folks are looking for: broad native support, centralized management, ownership and control over our data to do what we want with it when we need, and then that modular flexibility, not being forced into the consumption of an entire platform when we might just need a specific slice or two. So, I really just wanted to talk about challenges and again, what an ideal world would look like, and then also just give you a brief introduction to Veeam and our hybrid cloud strategy. Again, a lot of folks probably know Veeam, pioneers of that native, VMware native data protection for data centers. But, over the past 5 years, 6, maybe even 7 now, we've really been broadening our reaches beyond virtualized workloads within the data center, right? So we now have a broad ecosystem of cloud providers and a broad set of capabilities that, again, are there to help you own your data across any cloud. And we break that up really into 2 macro segments on how you guys are likely wanting to leverage the cloud. So firstly, the ability to protect, control, and manage your data in the cloud. So this might be production workloads, dev test workloads that run in the cloud. So delivering to you cloud-native backup and recovery across AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. So anything that's running there can be protected, again, with that native tool set applicable to that cloud. SaaS backup, right? So Microsoft 365, Salesforce. We've had Microsoft 365 for many, many years now. Ability to back that up, whether that's Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. But we're introducing this year the ability to back up Salesforce data and metadata as well. And then Kubernetes backup. We made that acquisition of Kasten K10 a little over a year ago, but that gives you that Kubernetes native backup. We know that more than 50% of Kubernetes workloads are running in the cloud thanks to services like EKS, AKS, GKE. So the ability to protect those in the cloud, but also on premises. And then also the last macro segment is around leveraging cloud for data protection and security. Something, let's say, a little bit more traditional. So being able to leverage AWS, Azure, Google, IBM, Wasabi, their object storage as a backup and archive target. So instead of having to manage and maintain, large data storage on premises, we can just simply target that at the cloud and fine tune that for cost and retention. Right? So as a backup ages, we transition that across varying different degrees of object storage, right down to the archival object storage classes, which help us meet those, sometimes decades-long retention requirements, but at a very, very low cost. Disaster recovery, right? So being able to leverage the cloud as a disaster recovery target is kind of the same problem that we just spoke about, right? Maybe we don't want to have to manage and maintain costly infrastructure at a secondary site. We don't have the resources to be able to do that. And the cloud represents a perfect option, and with Veeam, you can do that in as little as 2 steps. And then finally, the ability, missing a big one, ransomware protection. It is the word on everyone's lips, right? The cloud offers a wonderful opportunity to help defend against cyber threats like ransomware, whether that because we're utilizing the cloud as an air-gapped backup, the 32110 rule, whether we're utilizing immutability like Amazon S3 object lock. So we define a policy. Once that backup data has been committed, it cannot be changed, overwritten, deleted, encrypted until that time has been met. So if you do ever suffer a ransomware attack, a successful ransomware attack that has compromised your production systems, you've got an immutable, clean backup that is safe to recover from back into production. I mean, that's why we say secure backup is your last line of defense. Ransomware is constantly evolving. It's getting more smarter, more agile, better at accessing our systems. We need those clean backups. And then finally, the ability to migrate and modernize workloads, right? The lift and shift motion, take something that's running on premises and push that off into the cloud. So ultimately, Veeam is capable of doing all of these things, right? It's not just VMware backup and recovery. We absolutely do that. We succeed very, very well at that. But we have all of these options when it comes to your hybrid cloud strategy as well. Again, across AWS, Azure, Google, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, Kubernetes, and then everything on-prem, from physical workloads and virtual workloads to enterprise applications like SAP HANA, Microsoft SQL Server, so on and so forth. So these are the slides here that I kind of just dove into, just to leave them up on the screen there. While they're up on the screen, I do want to talk about licensing as well, because we all know that licensing is a headache, especially if you have to manage a ton of different licenses from multiple different vendors for their respective products. We have something called the Veeam Universal License. It is a flexible, portable, non-prescriptive license that can license pretty much every solution under the Veeam platform. And you don't, ultimately, if your strategy changes and you want to move a workload, that license will protect it at its source with that native backup and recovery for wherever it might live. Maybe it's VMware. If you move that to AWS EC2 or an Azure VM, the license will simply just move with it. So not only are we providing you the technological capabilities to actually move the data, but also the licensing capabilities. You don't have to pay any additional costs to Veeam to move something from one infrastructure to another. You don't have to go out and get another license, procure another license, launch a support ticket or a licensing support ticket. It just moves with it and it just continues to work. So you can always go at your pace and we'll never stand in your way there. Final slide just kind of goes into leveraging the cloud for data protection and security, which we already discussed. And that kind of throws us out for Q&A. So let's have a look here and see if there's been any questions that have come in from you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a ton of questions coming in for you, Sam. While we take those questions, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there in the audience. We want to call your attention to this. It says, what additional information would you like about Veeam? And obviously, there's a lot of great questions about this, a lot of excitement coming in. Sam, unless you see one there that you specifically want to start with, I was going to go ahead and start with this one. Larry's asking about how does it work with agents and Veeam? Do you use agents or not use agents, or have the option to do it if you want to? How does it work?
Yeah, you absolutely do have the option to use agents, Larry. So we delivered agent support for Windows and Linux many, many years back, and any Windows and Linux workloads that are running in the cloud can also be protected by those agents. In fact, before we introduced our cloud-native backup and recovery capabilities for like AWS and Azure, we had customers that were installing thousands and thousands of agents within their cloud environments to protect those. So you do have the option to continue using agents if you wish. We also see customers do a bit of a mixed approach as well. Some machines will have, AWS or Azure native backup and recovery powered by Veeam, and some of their other machines in their cloud environment will utilize an agent. And again, the glory of that license is that license will license all of those things. So if one day you want to protect it with an agent and then the next day you want to protect it natively, you can just literally bring that new workload into a policy and that license will start licensing it natively, I guess.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's good to have that kind of flexibility for specific use cases. Let's see, Venkat is asking, what can Veeam do to protect the backup data? Is there any sort of immutable backup support?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have for on-premises our hardened Linux repository. So that includes the immutability capabilities there if you want to back up on-premises. And then with AWS, anything that's in S3, we have that Amazon S3 object lock integration as well. So anything that lives in S3 can also have that immutability. Recently, we just heard, obviously, Microsoft starting to augment their Azure immutability capabilities. So instead of locking those objects at the bucket level, they're going to start locking them at the object level. And they just started making those APIs available to third-party vendors like Veeam. So, that we are hard at work at integrating that immutability in Azure into the platform as well.
Excellent. And then I see here Rob's asking for some clarification on the immutability features. He's asking, does that only work if you put your data in the cloud, or could you do that like on premises, or if you had an alternate data center, you replicate your data over there? Can you do that sort of internally without the cloud?
Yeah, so hopefully previous answer helped that, but just to clarify, if you're putting your data into AWS, the object lock immutability capabilities are absolutely available there. But then we have a hardened Linux repository available as well for on-premises data centers. So you don't have to go out and buy an appliance or anything like that to get that immutability. It'll work on any storage, and that's all included within the Veeam Universal License, which I spoke about as well. So lots of different options. Keep your eyes and ears peeled on future releases because, again, ransomware, cyber threats are just at the forefront of everyone's mind, and we're very much community-driven in terms of what we deliver. So working hard on making that, harder, stronger, faster in terms of helping you overcome these threats.
Absolutely. Here's a good question. They're asking, what about scalability? Can we have a large environment? Can Veeam scale up to meet the scale that we'll need? Is essentially the question.
Yeah, it's kind of how long is a piece of string answer, but ultimately, we scale into environments that are exceptionally large. It ultimately just requires the right architecture to be able to handle it, making sure you're not meeting bandwidth limits, so on and so forth. But, we have organizations that leverage Veeam to protect tens of thousands of workloads in the cloud, like 30,000. So I'm not sure if your organization's that big, but absolutely we can protect things that large.
Nice. And then you must have mentioned at some point in the presentation cloud mobility. They're asking, what do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah, it's a bit of a Veeamism, I guess, but cloud mobility is ultimately the data portability story, right? The ability to move your workload across any infrastructure without limitations, without restrictions, as and when you want it. So again, if you wanted to go from like on-premises to one cloud to another cloud, on cloud back on premises, Veeam ultimately is going to deliver, again, the technological capabilities to do that, but also no additional costs to move it across infrastructures and the easy licensing capabilities as well. Right. So again, as you move that, you don't have to go and buy a new license for a new solution to protect it when it lands at its destination. You literally just point it at that and it's done. Nice.
Well, Sam, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live Q&A. I see 30 plus questions still there for you in the electronic queue. Maybe you can get back to some of those folks electronically. But great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the Megacast today.
Well, thanks for having us. Thanks for everyone for joining. And yeah, I'll run through the Q&A and answer you guys through good old type.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sam. Thank you to Veeam for being on the event today. Check out the handouts tab there. You'll find a PDF that you can download. It's the 2021 Cloud Protection Trends Report. This is a really cool report, tons of graphs and charts and everything, lots of data to help you kind of justify improving or strengthening your data protection, disaster recovery infrastructure. So make sure that you check that out. All right, it's now time for our next prize drawing on today's Megacast. I have an Amazon $500 gift card going to John Everett from Arkansas, and our next grand prize for a Surface Laptop 4. This is going out to Robin Aldrich from Michigan. Congratulations. All right, and with that, I'm excited now to introduce you to our next presenters on today's Megacast. Welcome to Rich Rogers, Vice President of Technology Partners, and Ashwin Warrior, Vice President of Product Management, both from Encorta. Rich and Ashwin, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, yeah. Take it away. Tell us about Encorta.
All right, we'll do. So we're going to talk to you today about Encorta's entire product, which we call a unified data analytics platform, but specifically about intelligent ingest. And it really is what we have hundreds of customers that are using Incorda for the full data analytics platform. But one of the benefits that all of our customers get is the intelligent ingest, which is a really fast way to integrate data from multiple sources and bring it to the cloud. And we're all bringing our data to the cloud today for analytics and business intelligence and other purposes, and Incorda is a way to get it faster and more modern than any other method on the market. So Ashwin and I are going to talk to you about today. You saw the introduction. Ashwin and I have been around for quite some time in the BI and analytics space, both having spent time at a lot of large enterprises and now with Incorda. And we're really excited about what Incorda has to offer. So let's get right into it because we only have 20 minutes. So like I said, Incorda is a unified data analytics platform, and we ingest data, from multiple sources in its detailed and raw format, and we bring it into Incorda. We enrich it. We bring it together in a common business semantic layer, and then make it available for analysis, sharing, and insights. And we do have a full suite of analytics and dashboarding and collaboration capability, but we also recognize that a lot of companies have invested already in data warehouses, in BI and analytics technologies. So we work with the best and most common products on the market for that as well. And today we're really going to focus on the ingest, enrich, and curate piece to get the data into whatever repository that you need it in for your analytics and reporting. And the great thing about Incorda is that, we can handle very large data volumes. We have some of the biggest companies in the world. We can handle a wide range of multiple sources, whether it's your ERPs or other line of business systems or databases. We get to the data in its detailed format. We're super fast. That's really what you're going to learn about Incorda today. If you remember nothing else, it's unmatched in its speed and being able to get at data and bring it to the point where you can do your analysis and reporting. And we keep it up to date, right? We have full loads, we have incremental loads, we have very great, ability to keep data up to date in a very fast way. And again, maintain that full fidelity and detail of the data. So, we are all moving our data to the cloud, right? Unfortunately, many customers are still using the old and antiquated ways of doing it, right? And that involves, data in, for example, an ERP system isn't meant for reporting analysis. It's not designed or architected in that way. So inevitably, you have to do some reshaping, right? And usually that involves aggregating or summarizing or putting it into a star schema. And, that is slow and it's inefficient and it requires a lot of ETL and data prep. And it's hard to do, it's timely, and it's also hard to maintain. And what you'll find with Incorda is that we eliminate that, and you no longer have to do that heavy lifting, and we make it much easier and efficient in doing so. And like I said, one thing you're going to recognize is Incorda is fast, right? And so there's several things that make us very fast, and I'm going to go through the two main ones here in a moment. But we've seen our customers, get value in, up to 10 times faster, right? Bringing their data into Incorda and available for business analytics. And the things we do to simplify and streamline it, we have two main things that I want to talk about. And one is our technology for intelligent ingest. And the way we get the data, we detect the joins, we bring it in, we compress it, we enrich it, and we put it in memory for super fast access. The other is our blueprints. And our blueprints really are full analytic applications and really streamline the implementation and time to value and make it very easy for customers to get at data sources. And I'll show you some of the blueprints that we built for you to get at that data very quickly. A little bit more about, Incorda and and our intelligent ingest capability. So you can see here we go at many data sources, right? Whether it's in an ERP like you can see here or other data sources, but we map directly to the data source. We eliminate the traditional transformation and aggregation steps, and we deliver all the data, again, in its detailed format to the business. And we do this with a few different things inside intelligent ingest. One is we do full and incremental data loading, parallel data loading without the data transformation. We enrich the data and the metadata map, and so every point of the data is aware of how it relates to every other point of the data. And we have smart query routing, so we automatically recognize the join paths. We don't need to do a query plan, for example, at runtime. It's already known, and we just execute the query. And so this provides really, unprecedented level of speed and agility with the system. And you can see here that, once we pull the data in and do that intelligent ingest with that loading enrichment, we then can store it, within Incorda and make it available to analysis and BI tools or into a data warehouse. Many of you have invested in data warehouses, and we work with all the major data warehouses on the market, and so we can load it into that data warehouse, and you can use your own tools if you choose to use something other than the analysis that we provide. Here's an example of one of our customers, a very large customer. They were, having refreshes on the order of 24 hours. It took to refresh their data because they were going through that, traditional ETL transformation, aggregation, pulling data in and making it available. Their query times were very long, and it took a lot of time and a lot of manpower. And now they're able to do 15-minute incremental refreshes. Their query times have drastically increased in efficiency, and they're able to do many more queries with a lot less manpower to maintain the system and keep it running. So, there's some great ROI here. This is just one of the hundreds of customers that we have using the system. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the blueprints. And so blueprints are really very helpful. And as I mentioned before, they're not. They're more than a template. They are really a full pre-built analytic application. And so what we do in the blueprints, and you can see here, right? Oracle eBusiness, NetSuite, Salesforce, SAP, Guidewire. These are just some examples. We have many more blueprints that people can leverage. So the blueprints provide pre-built schemas, insights, and dashboards. And it accesses the data, it organizes it, it presents it in a common, for these common business solutions, and really pulls together the key metrics, sample reports, visualizations, and dashboards. And so it does all the heavy lifting, and you can use them out of the box. So if you have one of these systems, let's say you have eBusiness Suite from Oracle, you can simply load our blueprint, and we know exactly what table you provided the connection string. It'll pull the tables that it needs to. It recognizes the joins. It pulls it all in memory, and it actually has pre-configured analytics, insights, metrics, and dashboards. And then you can tweak them to your needs. Of course, every customer is going to likely want to make some modifications, and that's very easy to do. And we provide the blueprints for multiple disciplines, right? And so you don't have to implement the full. You can implement, for example, procure to pay, right, or order to cash, or human capital management. So there's many flavors of the blueprints that we've built. Here are some of them, and you'll see these on our website. So I invite you to go take a look at our website and see all the blueprints there, and you can see examples of them, and you can actually try them out at no cost. Ashwin, I'm going to turn it over to you to get a little more into the blueprints and how they work, some of the secret sauce behind it, and also do a demo. So over to you.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks. So to take the blueprints that Rich pointed out, right, and to show what is the driver behind these blueprints within the Incorda data and analytics engine. At its core, what it's doing is, if you look at this visual, it's basically a visual of your source system. It could be Oracle eBusiness Suite, SAP, NetSuite, any large ERP or enterprise system that you might have. And typically these enterprise systems have a collection of tables grouped into logical schemas, and they're in their third normal form, right? So it's a heavily normalized data set, ideal for your OLTP workloads. But historically, over the last 25 years or so, it's been a conventional norm that you need to take this data, you need to flatten it out into a star schema, and load it into a data warehouse, and that's the only way you can have performance at scale for analytics. And we've sort of changed that paradigm around to say that you don't need to do that. You could keep the data in its true third normal form, as you see here, and that could be the basis for moving your data to systems like Synapse, or even for doing the analytics within Encoda. Encoda's got a full end-to-end analytics platform as well, right? So this is our secret sauce. We call it Encoda's direct data mapping. It's basically creating a mapping between all your source tables, and doing that logically in memory at scale is what we're really good at. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that that's not the only approach that we promote. I mean, there are some customers who say, that's great, we love what you're doing, it could work for some use cases or for many of our use cases, but we also want to move our data to a data warehouse, right, for other downstream analytic workflows. And even there, we can provide significant value, right? And in this example, and you'll see in the demo that soon follows, that there is value in trying to create these fact tables or dimension tables equivalents in your data warehouse using Encoda as the tool. And that's where the intelligent component of the ingest comes in. We call it the intelligent ingest because unlike tools like Oracle Data Integrator or Informatica or any other ETL, ELT tool out there, they're basically creating these transformation maps to take your source tables and create your dimension tables, right? We do this in a way that is extremely efficient. It is done logically in memory. We don't have to create these heavy duty ETL maps. It's done in a very seamless way. And I think the best way to show that is through the demo. So we'll go through a full end-to-end demo of the Encoda platform and how the intelligent ingest works. So as we kick off the demo, we start off with signing up for a trial license. It could be on Google Cloud, it could be on Azure. But the first thing you need to do is you need to create a data source. So in this case, we're creating a data source. We picked Oracle E-Business Suite for this example. So you put in your credentials, you've got the data source, and the blueprint that Rich talked about comes with a bunch of schemas and tables that are pre-built. And what these schemas have and what is the primary driver behind these, you can get all this information when you look at the documentation for intelligent ingest. And as you look through this, you'll see that there are a bunch of tables and schemas that are preloaded, right? So these are all the entities that come with a blueprint, a financial blueprint or a supply chain blueprint. So once you've got the blueprint and all the schemas, the first task is you've defined your source, you've configured your source instance. Let's go load the data for this. So since it's a demo, we'll take one of the smaller ones, like the calendar schema with a few tables, and we kick off a load. And you see the first thing we're doing is extraction. You're extracting from your source EBS instance. You're extracting it, you're putting it in Encoda's persistence layer, which is in Parquet, on, in this case, on ADLS. And once you've landed the data there, then you can see the different steps that are involved in this process as well. Let's also do this. Okay, so let's do this for a few other tables. But as we look at these other tables, you'll see that a schema has a collection of tables, right? And this is the visual that I showed earlier as well. The blueprint already has all these underlying relationships, these entity relationships with joins that are directly exactly the same as source. So when you run these loads, you're basically creating these entities and loading these entities. Once you've done that, we've got a semantic layer. What you're seeing here is a business schema, which is our semantic layer, which has all the business entities business users can relate to. So in this case, we're looking at the sales order line. And this activity that you're seeing is our secret sauce, right? Being able to take a transaction table that has billion records, look at the query plan, look at all the tables that it's joining to. You could have two large tables that are billion records each, and we could create a logical flattened output in memory quickly. So this, what you're seeing, is truly what differentiates us from most other ETL, ELT tools out there. Once you've done the heavy lifting with trying to create this logically flattened data set, the next task is to push this to a system, external destination like Synapse. It could be just writing to ADLS. It could be writing to your data lake. For the purposes of this example, we took Synapse. So the first thing we're doing here is we're configuring the destination. So we're looking at the SQL endpoint. And now what you're seeing here is we're looking at the SQL database. In this case, it's the partner encoder pool 22. So once you've got this information, you come back to encoder. Just like we defined a data source, we'll define a data destination. And in the destination now, we'll go in and we'll put the related credentials. So putting the SQL endpoint that we got from Synapse, the database name, and we're putting in the credentials. And once we test and we're good to go, we now have a destination that's defined, right? And we've called it EBS Synapse. So once we've done that, then the very next step is to identify which schemas you want to push to Synapse. We picked a common dimensions business entity. So this has, as you can see, accounts, cost center, balancing segment, all of these dimension tables that will be configured to write to Synapse. And when we do this task, we're basically taking the logically flattened data that's in memory, and we're writing this to ADLS in this example. So we did that for dimension tables. Now let's do this for a few fact tables that we've configured as well. And the two fact and dimension tables, you can now see there's an icon for Synapse that shows up. And once it's configured and good to go, the very last step in this process is you need to run a script. It's a PySpark script that's set up. It's basically executing the process of taking these schema tables that you've written to Parquet and pushing them from our data lake layer into the cloud data warehouse of choice. This is Synapse in this case. This is just walking you through the process of doing that, and you can see at the very bottom that it's enriching now, which means it is orchestrating the job. And I think we'll do the same thing for our dimensions as well. And in this case, since we're doing this the first time, we'll do it as a full, but you could also do this as an incremental, right? You saw it took about 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes to do the write. But this was a small data set, but even for large data sets, it shouldn't take too long. And once we finish this end-to-end cycle, you can preview the data. You can see what is the data that you wrote out into your Synapse table. And so you can do a quick preview, take a look. And once you've reviewed it within Encoder, you can do the same and confirm in Synapse as well. So if you refresh your SQL database, all the tables that we configured to write to Synapse from Encoder will show up with the data populated. So you can open any one of these tables and see the data. So a key takeaway from this, if I can summarize, is we can support an end-to-end orchestration of data. We're ideal for large-scale enterprise systems like Oracle, SAP, NetSuite, Microsoft Dynamics, and so on. And being able to get the data from all these source systems without having to create a dimension model and these ETL maps, you can quickly create these logical high-level entities and push them into data lakes or cloud data warehouses of your choice. But we also do the end-to-end platform, which means you could do all your analytics and stay within Encoda as well. Back to you, Rich.
Yeah, thanks, Ashwin. And that's a great summary. And so what you saw Ashwin do there actually on the fly is connect to an EBS system, load all of the data, leveraging the blueprints that, you don't have to do any of that. It's already done for you. With the blueprints that we have for the sources, of course, you can create your own source system connections, but that was a very quick and easy way without any ETL to bring data from a data source and make it available to a data lake, a data warehouse, whichever you've invested in. And if you haven't, you can use Encoda as the data repository itself. Like we both said, we have a full analytics and BI capability right within Encoda. So as you're moving your data to the cloud, to your data warehouse or data lake, or perhaps Encoda, please take a look. Don't use the old, cumbersome and lengthy time-consuming process. You should check out Encoda and see what hundreds of customers have already taken advantage of. Here's one use case. I won't go through it in detail because I know we're out of time. But one of our customers, you saw some. We partnered with Microsoft and us we have a built-in integration to Synapse. So if you are a Synapse customer, we have some pretty neat stuff with them. But you can see here that this customer, is pulling a ton of data from their source systems, SAP in this case, and bringing it into to Synapse, and has received a great ROI. And the last slide is, before we get to Q&A, is go try it out. Please, we have a free cloud trial. You can spin it up, play with all parts of it. You can leverage the intelligent ingest capability, connect to your own data source. We have sample data sources for you to connect to as well, and you can see it and play with it for yourself. So we invite you to do that. And I think with that, we'll go to a few minutes of Q&A.
Excellent. Yeah, great presentation. Really cool demo. This is a really innovative product that you all have there at Encoda. So thank you for showing it to us. We're going to go to our poll question that we always bring up here during our Q&A sessions. The question on the screen I want to call everyone's attention to is, what additional information would you like about Encoda? And we want to get your feedback on that. And so let's see, lots of good questions coming in. It's kind of hard to know which one to start with. I'll just start with this one first. They're asking, can Encoda work with any cloud provider?
Yeah, Ashwin, do you want to take that one, or shall I?
Sure, I can take that. Encoda, a SaaS offering, is on Google Cloud, but we, just like you saw in this demo, we could work with Azure, and you could also work with AWS. We have customers using this at scale with all three cloud vendors.
Nice. I like that flexibility there. Let's see. Next question. They're wanting to know, can Encoda be used with other data visualization tools that they already have in place?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'll go ahead and take that. So, yes, we actually have built-in integration to. We have an API that you can leverage with any tool you like. But we do have many customers using a variety of different tools, whether that's Tableau or Power BI or Excel. So yes, and we actually have a certified connector with Tableau. So yes, you can use other BI tools on top of Encoda, or like we said, the Encoda analysis capabilities natively. And we find a lot of customers do both, right? Because inevitably, most customers out there have more than one analysis tool, and everybody has Excel. So we've embraced all of those.
Very nice. And then they're also asking here, does Encoda require that I have an EDW to work?
Go ahead, Ashwin. I'll let you take that one.
Sure. It does not. It does not require, and unlike most other analytic tools, it does not require an EDW. And the reason for that is we do not require a flattened star schema before we can run the analytic queries. We can pull directly from a data lake, from your source systems, and provide quick value.
Yeah, but I'll just add that if you have invested in an EDW, then we'll use that as the destination and push the data there for you, like you saw in this example with Synapse.
Okay, excellent. And then what about, can you tell us like how many customers out there are using Encorta today?
Yeah, we have a couple hundred customers and growing. And like we said before, some of the largest companies, and if you go to our website, you'll see a number of stories, right, about customer references, if you will, and you'll see that we have some of the biggest companies in the world, but also, and that's really attributed to the fact that of the large data volumes that we can handle and get at that data very fast. But we also have many companies that are not large, small and mid-sized companies, and one of the benefits of being a SaaS software is that we can scale. We can scale to leveraging the cloud. So, if you only need it, if you're a small company and you need this capability, it's you're only going to get charged for what you use in our model. So we have companies of all sizes, but we can handle more data volumes as you grow, right? So that's one of the benefits.
Very nice. All right. Well, Rich and Ashwin, great presentation. Again, cool demo. I see 25 plus questions there in the electronic queue for you. Maybe you can get back to some of those folks. We just ran out of time here in our live Q&A session, but thank you so much for being on the Megacast today.
Great. We will definitely get back to the questions of those of you who asked them. And again, please visit us, give us a try, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. So thank you for having us.
Excellent. And I will bring up the link here again on the screen, cloud.encorta.com/signup. That is a clickable link for anyone out there. If you just mouse over that and click on it, it will bring up a new web browser tab or window there in your audience console. And I'll leave that up while I announce our next Amazon $500 gift card. Let's see, this is going out to Alea Mint from Minnesota. Congratulations, Alea Mint from Minnesota. All right, and with that, it's now time for the next presentation on today's Megacast. I'm excited to welcome Alan Waters, Senior Solutions Marketing Manager at Nutanix. Hey, Alan, it's great to have you back on.
Hey, thanks, David. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Well, tell us about Nutanix. Yeah, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, David, again. Alan Waters, as David mentioned. I am product marketing here at Nutanix. And today I'm going to spend some time talking about really the top use cases that we've been seeing for the hybrid and multi-cloud solution. I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about a hybrid multi-cloud. I know when David and Elias did the opening keynote, Elias was really talking about some of the things that, the Nutanix hybrid multi-cloud solution and the use cases can really solve, right? He mentioned auto-scaling was difficult once you got it up, and monitoring, and security, and cost implications, data protection, which we've had a couple sessions on here. So I'm going to talk about top use cases, talk a little bit about a hybrid cloud, and at the end I'm going to finish up with, what the hybrid multi-cloud solution from Nutanix actually is. So I've been using this visual, for a couple months at least, and I think it means more today than ever before, given what we've all been through in the last couple of years, right, with COVID. IT teams really find themselves with the added stress, having to increase agility, get things done faster, trying to provision new workloads on demand, trying to scale capacity, which can always be difficult, right? Whether you're having to buy new equipment and so forth, bring new users on board without compromising security. I mean, I'm sure there's teams listening right now that they went home on Friday and, they were told, hey, we have to have 500 people work from home on Monday. Can you do it? Do you have the environment to do it? Can you change quickly like that, right? That's a real story. And sometimes it requires a more modern IT strategy, one that really spans those public clouds, one that spans an on-premises private cloud if you already have one, of course. and a strategy that allows you, IT managers, to place workloads on the right cloud for the best economics, for the best performance, service levels, and control. And really what we believe is that if you pick a correctly built hybrid cloud platform, it can simplify, and it can really be the answer, and one that provides the simple integration between your on-prem private cloud and those public clouds. So I keep mentioning hybrid cloud. You've heard it all day, but why hybrid, right? A cloud survey that was recently done showed that 85% of IT professionals, maybe you're one of them, would pick hybrid cloud as their ideal operating environment. But why? I mean, the reasons are on the visual there. It's really the best of both worlds, right? It gives you the best of both. It gives you the on-prem, the predictability, the performance, and even the regulatory and security pieces that you rely on from the private side. But then, hey, when you look at the public side, cloud native, multi-geographic if you need it, less infrastructure, spin VMs up quickly, get applications rolled out quickly. And really, if you can set up a seamless hybrid multi-cloud, it makes all of that easy. So here's a slide that I like to show because, the term hybrid multi-cloud gets thrown around like it's an easy thing to set up. And I know a lot of you sitting out there have been through it, tried to do it, and it's not easy. When you look at data locality, when you look at the workload portability, when you look at the licensing, right? Does this license cover this here, or does it cover it up there? The security that has to follow workloads across clouds. Do you have to set it up again when it gets on a different cloud, where there's a public cloud? Again, I mentioned license portability. Of course, the latency at the bottom there, direct connect. There's a lot that goes into it. And it's not easy to set up, although the term, in my opinion, gets thrown around quite a bit. So a little bit about hybrid cloud, right? Things that go into it, some challenges to think about. So let's take a look at key use cases that we're seeing from customers that are moving over to the Nutanix hybrid multi-cloud solution. And really, it's a hybrid cloud solution that uses hyperconverged as the foundation. So key use cases that we're seeing: business continuity, on-demand elasticity, and lift and shift. And you would think these are probably the three most popular that you're probably thinking about or seeing yourselves out there. So let's talk about business continuity. And really the challenges here for business continuity and disaster recovery for that matter. Organizations are really looking for a better way to provide service level agreements, and they need to be able to recover faster. So having the ability to easily set up a solution outside of your current data center and even expand into different geographics. And of course, there's a lot of silos out there, lots of different solutions, making things, oftentimes more difficult, and so forth. So there are a lot of challenges with business continuity. So Nutanix solution, our solution can really provide business continuity and DR without cloud lock-in. So you actually have a choice of clouds, and whether it's on-prem or you want to use AWS or even Azure, you can really pick the public cloud that you prefer. And if things change down the road, you can move from one to another. It's that easy. And of course, having the ability to recover in minutes, it's all a necessity while reducing costs and not having to stand up another data center to expand your footprint. So on-demand elasticity. So bursting, right? On-demand elasticity or bursting, another term that gets used quite a bit, but also not an easy thing to do when you really look at the security and compliance requirements that might have to go into it, the latency that goes into it, load balancing, platform compatibility. So again, this is another term that I think gets thrown around quite a bit, and there are some challenges with on-demand elasticity and getting it to work correctly. So there's a lot to go into it. Then, of course, there's the over-provisioning side. Did you buy too much? Are you spending too much money here? What do you do then? And a lot of these things can add up quickly. So the Nutanix solution actually removes a lot of these worries as well. Since your on-prem private cloud is going to be just like your public cloud or your hybrid multi-cloud solution. It's all managed the same. and we'll look at that a little bit more, the management piece of it. But when you need more capacity, you can easily burst into the public cloud. And really a unique feature that we also offer is the ability to hibernate a cluster that, say, is living up on AWS or living up on a public cloud, and it's easily done with a simple one click. So when it's not needed, you can click hibernate, and money can be saved without it still running. So if you think of an example for this, think of a test dev, right? In the test dev environment, maybe some folks go on vacation, the cluster isn't needed, so rather than leaving, all those VMs and that application running for, say, a week or 2 weeks, you hit the hibernate button, and then when everybody comes back or they're ready to start work on that project again, you simply hit resume, and everything goes back the way it was. So you save those 2 weeks of spending on the public cloud with that hibernate ability, which I think is pretty cool. So lift and shift, another popular use case we're seeing, and really it's a matter of taking a workload from here, maybe you're on-prem private, and moving it up to the public cloud. Really simple, right? But do you have to re-architect it? How long is that going to take? Is it worth re-architecting? How much money is that going to cost? What other skills do you need to make it happen? And it's not just, the re-architecting piece. Maybe it's the management piece. So on the lift and shift, moving workloads from here to there are a lot of things to think about and challenges to think about with this as well. So the good news is that the lift and shift use case is also simplified with the Nutanix hybrid cloud solution. Having the ability to move, say, a workload from your on-prem cluster, private cloud, say, to the public cloud is made easy and seamless. There's no re-architecting. There's no complicated migrations. It's all done within the same management tool. And the management tool, the unified management tool that Nutanix has is called Prism. So it's all managed from within there. So it's the same control, and it's all easily maintained. So, of course, all those complexities we talked about and all these common use cases are easy and I truly believe that if you pick the right platform. And the Nutanix Cloud Platform, which is based on HCI, hyperconverged, right, makes it easy. Connecting to a public cloud can really be done in literally less than 60 minutes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And it really provides you a complete path, and it sounds a little corny, but hey, it really does provide a complete path for your cloud journey. So here's some differentiators to think about when you're trying to look or you're doing your research on a hybrid cloud solution. And I mentioned a little bit a second ago about the license portability when we had the hybrid cloud complicated slide up early in the presentation here. But license portability, do you have to worry about allowing licenses or even double buying licenses when a workload moves from one cloud to another? Do the licenses move with it? And again, like I said, some vendors might charge you double for the licenses depending on where that workload might be living at the time. Native integration. So we spent a lot of time integrating with AWS, and Azure will be out shortly. It's public preview right now. But we spent a lot of time with the native networking integration. So on AWS, the VPCs, or like Azure on the VNet side. So we did a lot of native integration to make a lot of these things I'm talking about simple because we put the extra work into it. Seamless app migration between clouds. And again, when you think of, there's a difference really between hybrid multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, right? And previous speaker was talking about it where if you do have multiple clouds, and most organizations are probably using multiple clouds, how easy is it? Say one public cloud reduces their costs, and you want to take advantage because it's running that application might be cheaper over on another cloud. How easy is it to move from one cloud to another? That's true multi-cloud, right? Simply not re-architecting, not having to do this, not having to do it, but you got to be able to take that workload that's running on one public cloud and move it over to another. That's a true multi-cloud, which is what Nutanix does. And again, the single management plane that we use, Prism, allows all of that to happen. So, when you're doing your research, make sure you take some of these key differentiators into mind when making that hybrid cloud journey. So, and that's exactly what we do. The Nutanix Hybrid Multi-Cloud Platform, offers all these differentiators. We enable you to run clusters, and I mentioned a second ago, on Amazon Web Services, AWS, and Microsoft Azure is in public preview right now. You can request access to it, but really it's delivering the full Nutanix software portfolio to run on these public clouds, as well as on-prem, right? On-prem private cloud, all with the single management that I've been talking about, unifying your private cloud and your public cloud to give you that a real hybrid multi-cloud solution. And here's a quick look at the details. I won't spend too much time here, but I do like to show that, when you're looking at, say, at AWS, how that cluster is going to run. So there's bare metal servers, EC2 instances that'll all be managed via Prism that I've mentioned a couple of times. That's our unified management, providing almost identical functionality to your on-prem HCI environment, your on-prem private cloud. And one of the cool things, and I mentioned it a second ago, that we spent the time to do a lot of the native integration. So you can use your AWS accounts, you can use all the credits, VPCs, VPNs, all the direct connect configurations, all of those configurations and abilities we've integrated with to make it simple and make it easy to set up. And really the result is you get a full hybrid multi-cloud experience without having to deploy or manage data center infrastructure. So here's a quick look at the AWS availability, all the locations. There's 23 of them right now, all insulated from failures, from the other availability zones. Of course, you get on the left-hand matrix there, or left-hand table, you can see that there are different bare metal instances that you can pick from. So depending on what the workload is like, the application is like, you can pick different instances of those bare metal servers, and you can really pick the appropriate one to run it on. And of course, we also support AWS GovCloud, really for those public sector organizations looking for a strengthened security posture. You can use AWS GovCloud. We've also been added to the FedRAMP, so it's another great option for those public Fed SLED organizations if they're looking to move to public cloud. And of course, big benefits. The hybrid multi-cloud solution, it really comes down to the seamless application mobility, the unified management that I've spoken about quite a bit, and all those clouds being managed from that central unified management software that really makes everything else easy, right? There was a pretty good tweet within the last couple of months of a guy doing upgrades, from the Grand Canyon because he was vacationing in the Grand Canyon, and I think he forgot to do something, but that's how simple Prism is to use, being able to do kind of that life cycle management on vacation from the Grand Canyon, right? So it's really what we lean on for that unified management piece. So getting the whole hybrid cloud up and running, and I mentioned it before, can literally be done if you have an on-prem, Nutanix hyperconverged environment running. You can literally connect it to AWS in less than an hour. We say 45 minutes, but I say an hour. Because, and I mentioned it, because of all the integration that we've done to make it easy and make it simple, we make it the whole thing easy to get started. And you're probably sitting there, Alan, can I try this out for myself? And of course you can. I would recommend taking the test drive at the first link there. I'm not sure, David, it doesn't, I think they are clickable. But try the test drive. You can actually get in there. You can see how easy it is to get tasks completed with the Nutanix. All the one-click simplicity, a lot of the features that we talked about today during the presentation. So that test drive is probably the number one call to action that I'd probably offer you today. And then the second one, if you want to get started with a free trial, for the Nutanix Cloud clusters, use that second link as well. And that's it, David. That's my presentation. I hope I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A. It looks like Jeffrey has a question there. So I'll keep an eye on the Q&A. But David, I think I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, great presentation. I will share those links here in just a moment again when we're done with the questions. But the test drives sound like a great opportunity to try this out for yourself. If you want to see it in action, I think that's always the best way to learn more. So we'll share those links here in just a moment, but of course they're over there at Nutanix.com. First question I wanted to ask you, Alan, and I should point out to everyone out there, the poll question is on the screen. We do appreciate your feedback there on the poll. First question that came in here on the screen is they're asking about, does Prism work only with Nutanix hardware, or does Prism work to monitor other hardware and software?
Yeah, great question. So it does work with non-Nutanix environments. So say you're a VMware customer, you're using vSphere. So we can manage vSphere from Prism, and you can see everything that's going on within those clusters, and even non-Nutanix. So if you do have VMs running, say on an older environment, we can actually see those as well. So Prism isn't just for Nutanix. It is capable of seeing a lot of other environments. So that's a great question.
Absolutely. And then here's a good clarification. They're asking, when you talk about private cloud, are you only referring to an on-premises data center? In other words, using private cloud on premises, or could private cloud run in the cloud?
Yeah, and I kind of brush over it, and the person asking the question is right. You can have a hosted private cloud, but when I was talking through this presentation, since Nutanix is known for HCI, and we've been the leader in HCI from the very start. Usually, when I say private cloud, I'm talking about your on-prem HCI environment. Not to say that you can't have a hosted environment as well, but a lot of times through this, when I say private cloud, it's the on-prem HCI environment that I was referring to most of the time.
Got it. Okay. And then here's a good question. They say we've got a couple of VMs in OpenStack running on VMware. How would you advise we migrate and keep the VM and the data intact? Does Nutanix have tools to help in that migration?
Yes. Another. It seems like these questions are getting set up for me. It's perfect. But yeah, so there's multiple, and one of the great things about one of the other great things about Nutanix is that we consider ourselves open, right? So you're not stuck to vSphere. If you make the move, if you want to make the journey over to hyperconverged, you can run everything side by side, right? So you can have a cluster running vSphere. You can have a cluster running containers. You can have a cluster running the Nutanix hypervisor, which is AHV, right? You can even have the Microsoft hypervisor. So that's the great thing about Nutanix being open. So it's not just open for hypervisors, it's open for hardware. You have a lot more choice on the hardware server side. And of course, you saw through this presentation, we're open on clouds, right? We're not just AWS, and it's a true hybrid multi-cloud, being able to move workloads between one cloud and another cloud, and then say your private on-prem cloud. So when we do say open, we really mean it.
Excellent. Let's see, here's another one. How does Nutanix Hybrid Cloud compare to some of the other vendors out there? Maybe I'll flip that question around, and what makes Nutanix unique in the market?
Yeah, and some of the other, and I know probably the vendor that they're talking about, and really the big difference there is when you look at the solution that I just presented, right, you still, as an IT person, you still have control over the environment, right? We're not a service. So, rather than waiting on the service to do, say, an upgrade, or maybe there's a security, feature feature that needs to be implemented, rather than waiting on them, you still have control. You could still have, the ability to do upgrades and to change the drivers and do things like that. And while we make that whole life cycle management easy, we like to say, rather than going the service route, you still have control of the environment and have the ability to do things rather than kind of handing that off to someone else.
Absolutely, yeah. That control is important. And then let's see, how can I connect AWS to my on-premises environment?
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about that. So when you say on-premises environment, that will be, say it's a Nutanix you've made the move to Nutanix, right? So you have an on-prem private cloud running Nutanix HCI, right? So when I say connecting that environment up to AWS, that's when it takes less than an hour. So usually the confusion is, well, I'm a traditional 3-tier customer. I have servers, I have storage, and that's why I kind of use this cloud journey or platform for your journey. So we're not saying toss all that out, but make room for hyperconverged, because hyperconverged, I can do a 2-hour presentation on hyperconverged by itself, right, and the simplicity that hyperconverged brings, when you compare it to kind of those silos and those legacy 3-tier environments. But so really the steps are, if you do have an environment like servers and storage, make the move to HCI, hopefully Nutanix HCI, and then you're really that journey is open for you. Maybe you don't have to go to public cloud today, right? But you have a new on-prem HCI environment that's easy to manage. You're saving money. But maybe 9 months down the road, maybe your sales team comes to you with a new application that's maybe it's a better fit for AWS. What are you going to do? If you don't pick a good platform or an easy platform, you might have to set up another silo, which is fine. But the great thing about Nutanix is that you can put that application up on AWS and manage it through the same interface that you've been using for the past 9 months, all under Prism. So that's kind of how I like to talk about the journey, especially for an organization that might be on the traditional SAN server storage kind of environment. Make the jump over to HCI, and then things get easy after that.
Excellent. All right. Well, Alan, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live Q&A, but there's a lot more questions there for you in the electronic queue. It's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you to everyone who joined us here on this session. Don't forget about the test drive links. They're there on your screen on the slides window. If you just mouse over that and click, that will take you to the Nutanix test drive or the Getting Started free trial. Getting Started with Nutanix Clusters free trial. So make sure that you check those out. And also there is a resource in the Handouts tab as well on hybrid and multi-cloud use cases from Nutanix. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to fellow moderator, Mr. Scott Becker, to announce our next series of prizes on the Megacast. Scott?
Thank you, David. Great event so far. Looking forward to all the stuff that's coming up. And now, as David mentioned, it's time for our next prize drawing. And the winner of our next $500 Amazon gift card is Puneet Gupta from Texas. And on to our next grand prize. That's a Microsoft Surface Laptop 4, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs SSD in your choice of color. And the winner of this Surface Laptop is Joey DeCiaccio from Massachusetts. So congratulations to Puneet and Joey. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes. And now it's time for our next presentation in the Cloud Strategies and Solutions Megacast. And our next session comes from Duo. Presenting for Duo is Wolfgang Gorlick, Advisory CISO with Duo. So let's turn things over to Wolfgang.
Talk and the clouds break. Continuity in the 21st century. My name is Wolfgang Gorlick. I am an advisory CISO with Cisco Secure. And today I am here on behalf of Duo Security, which of course provides trusted access, single sign-on, multi-factor, passwordless, those types of technologies. The type of technologies that you need to make sure to stay up all the time. Why? So that you can access cloud resources. What I'm going to be looking at today is very broadly three things. Three things we're going to talk about. One is continuity and recovery. What is it? What are some of the mistakes that people make? What works? What doesn't? From then, I'm going to delve into how to elevate this conversation to gain executive buy-in, to gain support, right? How can we use continuity and recovery strategically to really have a bigger, broader conversation? So part one, let's talk about continuity, right? How do we establish continuity and recovery for cloud services? Well, first off, some things really haven't changed that much. When you do good recovery, you want to start with a business impact analysis. What is it? What is all this stuff that we have? What are the apps that people are using? What are the resources they're consuming? Who works with who? What are the main business processes? That type of understanding is what we would glean from a business impact analysis. And when we get to the strategic aspects of these programs, that type of understanding is what allows security leaders to have much better conversations with their peers. So that hasn't started or hasn't changed, right? Know what we have and know what it means hasn't changed. What has changed is, look, new threat scenarios exist. We may have had to worry about power outages, but we didn't necessarily have to worry about, back in the day, a cloud provider being down for a period of time, a DNS taking everything down, a routing error taking everything out, right? The threat scenarios themselves have changed. Also, because so many of the assets we're consuming are now SaaS-based or what have you, many of the assets that we need to protect are outside of our control. It's the good old days where they're inside of our own data centers in our own four walls, and we had some support for that, but that is no longer the case. With this shift to SaaS apps, with this shift to infrastructure as a service for our cloud data centers, we have new continuity strategies. It's no longer simply hot and cold site. It's no longer simply restoring from tape. We have new things we can do. And because we have new things we can do in new ways with new services, it really has evolved. BC and DR have evolved to be much more of a team sport. So first off, let's tackle those threat scenarios, right? The trick to a good disaster recovery plan is to take the various threats and group them by effect. What is the real difference between an earthquake and an asteroid? Well, hopefully the asteroid doesn't happen too often, but the overall impact to the building, to the resources, is probably about the same. Fire and flood, similarly, right? Tornado, similarly. These effects will all strike in terms of outages of key services or perhaps key people, similarly. So we want to group them up. Very important, because if you look at something like the open threat taxonomy, hundreds of threats. Do you really want to create a scenario and a recovery plan for each one of those? Probably not. Let me clarify. Let me say that differently. Definitely not. It's not where we want to be. Now, the other thing to look at is tiering processes by impact. If a process is down, what is the impact to the organization? And maybe payroll and HR are similar. Maybe marketing is similar, right? Maybe they can be down for a while without having a significant impact. If you're in manufacturing, right, the key thing is the manufacturing plant up. If you're in money management like I was, the key thing was, can we trade? Can we do stocks? Everything else became secondary. So you can start tiering the individual processes, and of course all the technology that enables those processes, by recovery tier, by the impact as an organization. And this allows us to line things up, right? Creating one continuity recovery strategy for several business processes affected by several threat scenarios greatly simplifies how we're going to develop the plans we're going to develop. So what do we do then? How do we get things back up? Well, maybe it's failover connection, right? If we need that direct connection, it's outage that's causing it. Backup and recovery, latest and greatest hits. We still need the ability to do that backup and recovery. Maybe it is ground to cloud. I know a lot of organizations are doing that as their recovery strategy. If they're already in the cloud, maybe it's region to region. So we have some regional failover. Worst case scenario, possibly, if you can do it, is manual processing. I was working with a headhunter firm, and I kept asking, what do you do if the tech's down? And I kept getting all these blank stares. And I kept asking, what do you do? I'm trying to write a plan for you. What do you do if like you can't get to those apps? Blank stares. And I keep asking, I keep pushing. I'm like, surely there's something you can do. And finally, one of the person I was working with looked at me and said, look, Wolf, it's not like we can just pull out a credit card machine and chunk it to invoice people. If we don't have the tech, we're not working. So maybe manual processing isn't an option. Maybe it's insurance. Maybe it's ensuring we have the right insurance to cover that outage. Whatever it is, the important point I want to get through at this stage is this. We want to do fewer things better, right? Have a few strategies, have them well practiced, have them well honed, have them well documented, and rely on those few strategies. Now, one of the interesting things is we don't necessarily have to have a strategy. There's really been a great emergence in what I call the do-nothing DRs. There's the die pattern made possible and made well-known by Sunil Yu, which is having your distributed immutable ephemeral infrastructure. I was working with a SaaS company, and again, I was like, well, what are you doing? How are you recovering these nodes? And they're like, why would we? I'm like, because you got data flowing through them. And they're like, yeah, but that's not data storage. It's data processing. So I'm crunching the data. I'm running some analytics. But if I lose that node, big deal. It's just I move the data onto another part of the pipeline. It was a Kafka pipeline, if you're wondering. And I was like, oh, that's really an interesting pattern, right? If the environment itself is ephemeral and immutable, it doesn't really need to be recovered. We can just rebuild it, which is the other common pattern that's emerging, which is using CI/CD pipelines to reinstantiate the infrastructure. I really like both of these models. I would add one caveat. If you are using automation, right? If you're using automation to automate everything, suddenly the automation itself means everything. So make sure that we're including the CI/CD pipeline, the automation scripts, the build scripts, those sort of things. Make sure that we're including those things in our top tier assets. I know of one organization that was relying on this pattern very heavily, and it worked great until their Jenkins build environment was unavailable because it was also taken down as part of the event. And suddenly the strategy doesn't work so well anymore. So that's the disaster recovery side of things, right? Disaster recovery is bottom up. We're going to tier by impact. We're going to tier by value. We're going to come up with a few strategies. We're going to get really good at these strategies. The trick to the disaster recovery component is not getting lost in the weeds. It's very easy to do that, which is why I started off by saying consolidate things, do fewer things better. Now, the business continuity side of things we're going to look at next. And I also want to look at some of the common mistakes that organizations make when building business continuity strategies. Again, we can look at some of the things that we used to think, some of the old myths, like, oh, you don't need a backup if you've got RAID. Yeah, well, what happens if you lose multiple disks? Or one time I was responsible for a storage array in a data center, and we had a power surge, not a power outage. And what ended up happening is we effectively corrupted the data, right? But we had a RAID. Everything should be fine. Nope. No, we had to rely on something else. Similar, don't back up replicated data. Makes perfect sense until you're replicating bad data. Image level backups are fine. This is another thing we used to say. Well, it's okay. We've done an image level backup until you need one file within that image, and now you've got to restore the entire thing to get that data out. Some new myths that have cropped up is, hey, we don't need to back up infrastructure as a service. We're in a shared service model, right? The cloud provider, I'm sure, is handling all that. No. We do need to make sure that the individual components, we're getting data out, especially infrastructure as a service, especially platform as a service. Our databases and data structures being backed up, our containers being backed up. Similarly, cloud instance snapshots are fine. Very similar to the image level backup myths in that, well, we've got the data, should be okay. Yeah, well, do we really want to go through restoring everything? Do we have the time for that? And I think the biggest myth of all that's been consistent both in the old ways of doing continuity recovery and in the new ways is we've got a business continuity plan. It's cool. We've got it covered. We've got a plan. So I'll tell you, before joining Cisco, before working with Duo, I did consulting, and my team read 176 business continuity plans. So you don't have to. Here's the mistakes that were made, the common mistakes we saw again and again and again. Mistake number one, right, of the three common mistakes, was the wrong person. We've given the BC role to someone who is free, like a PM in operations, or we've delegated it to, and this is very common as well, we've delegated writing the governance for our BCDR plan to the junior analyst. We've delegated the actual backup and recovery to our junior IT professional. Why? Because they've got some time in their hands, and it'll be a great way for them to learn, we say, until there's a disaster, and now we're reliant on our most junior people who often didn't configure things right, didn't have the same battle scars as everyone else. So make sure it's not owned at the wrong level. This is true for the people writing and maintaining the governance. It's true for the people owning and writing and maintaining the infrastructure configurations, like the backups. It's also true for who we report up. I'm going to talk about the security outcome study in part 3 of this talk, but I'll tell you, in the security outcome study, we found a direct correlation to the efficacy of disaster recovery with board level reporting, with executive level conversations. So when I say wrong person, I don't only mean who's running your plan and who's flipping the switch on the backups. I also mean who's owning it and reporting it up to make sure the right things get done. Top failure number 1. Top failure number 2, the wrong technology, right? We're recovering at the wrong level. I got front-end load balancers. Everything's fine. Well, sure, but that doesn't do anything for your back-end databases. I've got data replication to another site. Everything's fine. Okay, that's good. But if you don't have the middle tier over there, we still can't operate our application. Right? Again and again, we see in business continuity plans the wrong technology being deployed to address things. This is also what tripped a lot of people up with the pandemic planning when they pulled out their dusty BCDR plans, blew off the dust, flipped to the page on pandemic, and it said, ship someone out a laptop. Sounds great until you think about all the technology that laptop has to be configured with, until you think about everyone else is doing the same thing, et cetera, et cetera. So making sure we've got the right level of technology. And finally, making sure that we're testing it. We've got goals for testing. People oftentimes do tests that don't apply. I inherited a BCDR plan many, many moons ago. And one of the things that they had put in for their quarterly testing was that they did a fire drill. Great, that's great. You need fire captains on every floor. Fire drills are very important, but that should not be the test that you're using to attest to data center recovery. Those are two different things, right? We're not testing the right scenario. So make sure that we've got the right person, the right technology for recovery, and the right goals for the tests. Of course, there's even more ways to muck it up The number one is, hey, it's outsourced. The cloud provider handles it all. We'll have Amazon or Microsoft send you their BCDR plan. No, it doesn't cover what's in our infrastructure. Using non-standard language or approaches, this is like the equivalent in a BCDR plan of code smells in source code, right? If something doesn't smell right, if you're using the wrong language, something doesn't smell right if you're taking a very non-standard approach. I'm not saying you have to follow NIST or ISO 22301. Those are very heavy for most organizations, but you should at least have the same stages, and we should at least use the same language. High availability used for recovery? No. Overly broad plans, like, oh, the cloud provider has it, or we're fine. Everything just moves over to the site without being very specific about the technology. No, big problem. Or the reverse, very, very specific plans. We've got to the letter instructions on what we're going to do if the asteroid hits. Way too detailed, unable to be maintained, probably hasn't been changed. For some reason mentions inserting a floppy drive. There's a problem. And then finally, plans that are handled in isolation. If the asset management is different, if the risk rankings are different than the rest of the program, we know that something's amiss. So make sure you have a plan and make sure you test the plan. Now, one of the things we've long wondered is how frequently should you test your plan? What are those activities? Now, activities like tabletops, activities like manual review, activities like full pull exercises, activities like even chaos engineering, right? The chaos monkey flipping the switch. Can we recover? How often should we be testing? What does good look like? In the most recent version of the Cisco Security Outcome Study, we pulled organizations and we found that organizations doing 5 or more business continuity disaster recovery exercises had the greatest level in a month, by the way, had the greatest level of success, right? We're significantly correlated with success. You can see the lowest, of course, we're doing 0 or 1. Not much change until you get to about 4, and then we take off. 4 and 5 seems to be the sweet spot. Now, it doesn't mean we need to do a full pull every single time. It can just be tabletop and discussions. But those organizations had the muscle for recovering on time. Now, how do you track and measure progress? Well, you look at the response outcomes of those tests. You look at the coverage of those tests, right? The scenario coverage. We make sure that we're covering the right business tools under business impact analysis. A lot of it is recovery coverage, and then once we've got that up, then we look at how long does it take us, recovery time, recovery point, how far back are we recovering to, those sort of things. So with business continuity, as opposed to disaster recovery, business continuity is top down, and really our goal here is to make sure we connect the dots with the right people, the right technology, and the right tests at the right frequency. Now, how can we use continuity and recovery strategically? How can we contextualize continuity within the business mission and objectives, right? How can we gain executive buy-in and support using continuity and recovery programs? I've long suspected that there was some secret magic, because the organizations I knew that were the best at achieving security outcomes oftentimes had a very robust BCDR program, which surprised me because a lot of people tend to ignore BCDR programs. So in 2021, we did a security outcome study. This was actually performed by Scientia, looking at a number of different organizations, nearly 5,000. It was a double-blind survey. So completely done correctly from a statistics perspective. And then we crunched the data. And we looked at, okay, we know we want to achieve some objectives, right? We want to enable the business. We want to manage risks. And we want to operate our teams efficiently. This is the goal of a security team. This is the goal of a security program. Based on these security outcomes, Scientia looked at 25 security practices and determined what what correlates with what and by how much, right? What is the activities that move the needle the most? And you can interact and explore with this data to see what changes what. But one of the things that jumped out at me was that the most significantly correlated practices are effectively resiliency practices, IR, DR. Those two are two of the five most successfully correlated. And if we look specifically at disaster recovery, we can see ways that we can use a DR program strategically, doing things like using the program to gain confidence of executive leadership. That can be because of the reporting structure I mentioned earlier. That can also be because we're talking about technical risks within a business context. We are protecting the manufacturing. We're protecting the healthcare delivery. We're protecting our ability to trade. The business level objectives are used in these conversations with DR to drive technical activities. Similarly, using that same language can gain executive leadership confidence. People with good BCDR are more likely to be keeping up with the business and are more likely to be able to identify and manage top risks. Again, why is that? I think it's because you're closer to aligning activities at a technical level with the business activities. Other benefits we see are minimized unplanned work, where that's a no-brainer. That's the whole point of disaster recovery. More likely to avoid losses from security incidents. Again, that is the goal. More likely to be running cost effectively. That is a very interesting one. I don't know if that's because the activities are better tuned or better honed. We really need to get more data on this. But my point is, all these are outcomes that are correlated with strong disaster recovery. So as you get business continuity and disaster recovery right, as we take care of what I covered first, and we get those things in place, we can then turn towards using the program strategically to have better conversations with our executive team, our board, and our peers to truly drive security from a business objectives, business mission, business first focused lens. Okay, in our last bit of time here today, we've looked at cloud continuity and recovery, what's changed, what's remained the same. We looked at some of the common mistakes people make in business continuity and in how they do their planning, and covered some of the ways to make these programs strategic. Why is this all important? I think it's important because of the elevator. that may seem like a non sequitur, but work with me here. The next time you're in an elevator, look down and see who made it. See if it's an Otis. I bet it is. One of the interesting things about the Otis elevator was the namesake of Otis, Elijah Otis, didn't invent the elevator. He invented the brake. He would take a platform out, go up 1 story, 2 stories, 4 stories, 6 stories, 6 stories in the air. A guy with a sword would cut the elevator line and he would plummet and the crowd would scream, right? Exactly the type of drama that you'd probably get from a TED Talk today. Maybe not. And at the last minute, the Otis brake would kick in and would save him from falling. It was the security control that allowed elevators to reach for the sky. It was a security control that enabled the last great migration from country to city and from ground floor to sky level nearly 100 years ago. And of course today, we're focusing our next big migration, which is really a story of moving from physical to virtual, moving from being online or being in person to being online. And I would argue the resilience we build today during the greatest migration of our lifetimes is going to be the resilience that makes tomorrow's wonders possible. Therefore, I would tell you that IT resiliency has never been more important. I want to thank you for your time today. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions after the fact, and you can also reach me on Twitter at JWGorlick. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wolfgang. Great information and fun presentation. Love the Otis reference. That was the informal name of the elevator in my freshman dorm in college. We do have a poll question for everybody that's up on your screen. Appreciate your feedback on additional resources you'd like to see from Duo. And it looks like we had a lot of questions that we can't get to right here, but Wolfgang and the Duo team will get all those questions, in an opportunity to respond to them, and also do take advantage of that Twitter address that he posted there on his final slide. I'd also like to remind everybody about the handouts. We've got a PDF from Duo. It's the 2021 Duo Trusted Access Report. It's 27 pages long, and it's chock full of good data and valuable information. So be sure to check that out if you'd like more detail on some of the information that Wolfgang's been talking about here. So I would just like to thank Wolfgang again for that great presentation and for bringing us up to speed on Duo. And thank you to everybody who's responded to the poll. We do appreciate your feedback. And I'll just leave it up here for another moment, and then we'll move on to our next presentation. In fact, I will leave it up while we do our next prize drawing. So the next prize drawing is for another of our $500 Amazon gift cards. And this one goes to Rod Ulrich of California. Rod Ulrich of California. So congratulations to Rod. We'll be in touch about claiming your prize. Okay, and now it's time for our next presentation in the Devising Cloud Strategies and Solutions Megacast. And our next session comes from Faction. And I'm delighted to have here Mike Phelan, Senior Product Manager for Cyber Recovery at Faction. Mike, welcome to the webcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I love these events. I think it's great when everybody get together and look at these different technologies and how they all merge, play out together. So.
Well, we love it when you come on. Yeah, so take it away.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to get going on these slides. So like we said, I'm Mike Phelan. I'm from Faction. And today I want to talk to everybody about a multi-cloud environment and how embracing a multi-cloud environment can really enhance your business. So before I jump in, too much with this, I want to just give a quick introduction because there's a lot of people out there might not have heard of Faction. We're not a new company. We've been around since 2006. We're based out of Denver, Colorado. We really have a foundation here in the hybrid and multi-cloud innovation. We've got a number of patents out there, and we'll look at it a little bit. I'll show you where some of those patents kind of come into play. We've got a lot of storage under management. So it's really about the data piece and moving that data to a spot where multiple hyperscalers can take advantage of a single set of data. So we've got a lot of proven expertise. We've got some great partnerships with VMware and AWS and Dell, and just recently we were named Dell Partner of the Year. So we do a lot of work with them and help them a lot in the multi-cloud space. So I'm really happy that is there for us. Now, before we jump right in and start talking about stuff, I want to look where a lot of environments are operating today. And we spent years doing this digital transformation and moving from our environments where we controlled all of the data and putting it into the cloud and using the cloud. And what's starting to happen is we're moving from one silo of data to a different silo of data, where now we've got operations that are running in an AWS or Azure, Google, or Oracle, or a number of different clouds. And these are really starting to become siloed operations, where I can't really share data between these different cloud entities. And there's a lot of good reasons you want to be able to do that. The hypervisors the hyperscalers are really doing some incredible work with the tools that they're bringing out to market. So if you start thinking of things like AI, ML, some of the data analytics pieces that they're able to do, and the different compute options they have, we spend a lot of time moving data from one environment to the next to take advantage of some of those compute options that are coming out through those. And with that, we start to get this proliferation of work and effort behind it. Because we've got multiple IPs, we've got a complex management with a lot of different contracts involved to say, how do we go across these different hyperscalers and manage that data piece? So what I'm going to start showing is how we at Faction are able to start consolidating some of that data there and still be able to share it out to all of the users in your organization. And we'll even look at some of the why we do that. So before I go too much further, I wanted to find out real quick, does your organization have operations in more than one public cloud? So I made this one really, really simple. It's either yes, no, or I'm not sure. And I'm sure there's several out there that maybe are not sure that they have it, because if I'm operating in an environment, I may not know that I've got multiple different people operating out there in the different clouds, because it's super easy to go out and find the tool sets I want that might not be in a cloud that I currently specifically manage and have part of my organization. So we're seeing these come in. So we're about half, 50-50 are yes and no, and that's typically what we see. I think a lot of times we look at the no's, and when we start digging in a little bit deeper, we find that there are some out there that do have other operations that are outside of where they would like to be. As we get more into the data analytics space, I think that will be more and more the case where we find there's a need to be able to operate with multiple clouds in an environment. Even for something like with Faction, there's a play with it. Even if I don't have multiple clouds, it's a good insurance policy a lot of times. But this is good. So yeah, we are at about 50% on each one. So I'll give that a couple more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and jump to the next one. And I want to look next at really why does a multi-cloud environment happen, or maybe more to the point, why it should happen. So there we can see the results. So we've got several that are saying no, they don't have a multi-cloud space, but there's almost an equal number that are saying that yes, they do have some sort of a multi-cloud environment. So let's look a little bit why multi-cloud happens, or maybe why it should happen. First up would be the developer's choice. We're finding that developers are a unique brand of people. They like to have that choice. They don't like to be locked into anything, and they really are looking for that best tool to do the job. And they get easily frustrated when they can't just pick the tool that they want. And they really do crave that freedom of choice. And it's so easy, as we all know, to be able to go out and find a tool on Google or Azure or AWS that might help make the job you're trying to do today a little bit easier. And if I can't easily take advantage of that, I'll get frustrated. But a lot of times they can't. I mean, I can go out and run my credit card and start playing with these environments. A lot of times you get a couple months for free, and all of a sudden I get a tool set that's really valuable. Another reason that multi-cloud happens is just that time to insight. And if I can go out and move my operation over to the Google Cloud, for example, and take advantage of their latest GPU technology, and it reduces my time for some of the analytics I'm doing. I go from 2 weeks down to a week because of the speed that they offer. There's going to be some huge value in that. And from a developer's perspective and those folks doing those jobs, a lot of times they're not thinking of the whole picture. They're thinking of their part of the deliverables for the company. And that's what they should be thinking about. They shouldn't have to worry about the rest of the part. But from an IT perspective, we want to make sure that we've got that data protected and available. And that's really what I want to show you that we can help with here at Faction. Another big one is cost. The cost one has two sides of the coin. Sometimes I can make things go faster and I get it for cheaper, and that might be one reason I shift to a cloud. The other one that can have a negative impact is as I start to have multi-cloud operations, and I'm sure we've all heard the horror stories about it, where somebody goes out and does something on a different cloud provider than they usually use, and they've moved the data from one cloud provider to the next, and there's this fee for that data movement. That's the egress fee. And that can be quite significant. I mean, you could talk into the thousands of dollars for a single month if you're moving things around quite a bit. So to avoid some of those things, you put it into a spot that all of your hyperscalers can access easily without having to have that data move between different hyperscalers. It's a good way to be able to lock that down. Another big one is collaboration. I put down two of them here. There's an intra-company collaboration where I can have different departments who might have different needs and want to take advantage of the different hyperscalers. Now I can offer that out to them, and they can easily connect to the tool sets that they're looking for. But there's also one that goes between companies. So I was talking to a potential client a few weeks ago, and they do cancer research, and they were looking to share some of their data out because they have a great database, and they're like, we need to be able to help more people with this and different aspects in the race to cure cancer. But they don't all come from the same hyperscaler, and that was one of the things that they were really trying to solve with. They have a database that's significant in size and is not easily moved, and so they're looking at trying to find somewhere that they can host that data and have it be accessible to whoever wants to come in and use it, regardless of what hyperscaler they happen to choose. And those are really some of the hardcore examples that I can provide behind that. So now, as has been on this slide, I'll just point out the Did You Know box that this is a significant push, because out there when we've looked and talked to organizations, but this one came from an independent group, that 92% of enterprises report having some sort of a multi-cloud strategy in their environments, and they're using over 2.5 public clouds. So there's a lot of people out there doing things in the different cloud space. So what is the next wave? So this is really what we're about. We're taking all of those silos of data and we're pulling it into one spot, and that's really what a big piece of what Faction is offering, is that consolidation. We have data centers all over the globe. We've got about 10 data centers. It was in one of my first slides. And we're able to help with that because we're co-located, we're cloud adjacent to the hyperscalers. And I don't have it on this slide, but we have a layer in there. We call it the FIX. It's the Faction Inter-Network Exchange, and that is the piece that allows us to quickly connect and provide a extreme level of performance to each of those hyperscalers. So now I can easily go in, have my data in one place, and connect that data to any one of the clouds out there. Really, that gives you that single copy of data. It's accessible by all the clouds all the time, and at the same time, I can have that data be accessible by Amazon and Azure, simultaneously. And it really does simplify and lower those management costs of the data aspects. And so I've got a demo coming up here in a couple of slides that will walk you through that process. But as you start thinking about this, what are the different types of solutions that are going to find the most benefit from this type of technology? And really, it's any data set that has meaning that might be used across those different hyperscalers. So if you think of it from an artificial intelligence or a machine learning or business intelligence, there's a lot of different tools that we like to take advantage of that live in the different hyperscalers. With this data consolidation piece and the ability to quickly connect to any of the hyperscalers, I'm no longer limited or restricted to just playing within one of those single clouds. I can really go across them and pull it down quickly into that environment. So this is a key piece, and the reason I like this slide is it really gets us thinking outside the box and within our own companies and saying, how can I take something like this to help move my organization forward? And you can look at this and say, well, maybe I don't have a need for today, but if companies start to pull in more data, and we see a lot of companies that use this type of thing when they're going through an acquisition, because both companies are going to have their secret sauces. They might live on different hyperscalers, and to be able to pull that data together in one place, now they don't have to worry about trying to go through those processes to bring the tool set from one company over to the hyperscaler of choice, they can leave those in place and really start to take advantage of the combined companies a lot quicker. So what are some of the things that are holding this back when we think about these multi-cloud challenges? And I really tried to break this down into just the three categories. One of them is going to be the financing piece, and really how do I optimize this storage cost and avoid some of these hidden egress charges that I get hit with once a month, and I really don't know how much I'm going to be hit with until the end of the month, and it really depends on how much I just moved across, maybe when I moved it across. There's so many caveats when you start looking into the Amazons and the Azures that says, well, when does these egress fees really hit hard? And it can change so quickly, depending on which region I'm going to and which direction I'm going to and the type of data. It really does get more complicated than it's worth. Integration is another big piece of why we wouldn't go multi-cloud. Trying to take that data and make it accessible across different clouds from an IT perspective is a lot of work, because there's so much that has to go between. If you're going to keep two different data sets independently managed but try to keep them together, that integration piece and using that multi-cloud really becomes hard to manage and really prohibitive from that perspective. So it's easier to have it consolidated. And then that third bullet there, that making the data fabric real, that's the piece that I'm going to show you in the demo. But it's really that piece there that says I can quickly connect my environments, and I don't have to mess with all those other networking pieces. It is all done through a GUI for us, and I could just pick the volume I have. I can pick the amount of performance I want, hit OK, and the system, after a few minutes, goes out, makes that connection, and immediately I've got that kind of access and speed. And then lastly, there's the technical expertise, and it's really hard to have people who are technically sound across all of those different technologies, and that's really a big piece of what Faction delivers. Is we've got that part done. We've consolidated a lot of that technology piece by saying we're not going to worry about the data. It's in one spot. That technology we can help with. That's a service that we'll help with. And then that networking part, now it's just up to that compute piece that the developers and data scientists and those types of folks are able to point down to and do the jobs that they've been studying and working towards. So another quick poll question. So I've kind of gone through and talked about where we are today and what multi-cloud does. So do you think your organization would benefit from the ability to share that same data sets between two different clouds? So you've seen a little bit about how we do it and why we do it. We'd love to get your perspective on that. And as we do this, I'm going to start to preview the next slide. I can't go forward on it because then it'll stop our poll. But really, it's a matter of what does Faction bring to the table from a multi-cloud perspective. And some of the things that we're going to bring are going to be the elimination of those data silos, so we can break those down. We're going to simplify the operations because you don't have to worry anymore about that data piece or that networking component. That's all done for us. It's through a GUI. I can quickly identify how big and what type of storage do I need and point to the hyperscaler with the appropriate amount of performance, and I'm up and running in minutes. So it's kind of nice that way. And that, of course, will reduce that TCO piece. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. I think we've got a good number there. Okay, so we are getting some folks that can see some value here. I imagine a lot of the ones that are saying no, and I'm not sure. These are things that we'd love to explore with you, as if time permits. And at the end of this, we'll show you some resources if that's appropriate. So I'm pushing along because I do want to get to the demo, make sure I have enough time for that part here. But this is what I was talking about as you guys were doing that poll question, was what Faction really does to help in this multi-cloud environment. So it does eliminate the data silos. It'll simplify all those operations, reduce the TCO, and expands that flexibility. So again, it's not the fact that I'm now locked into any one of these hyperscalers. I really do open it up to say we can attach to any one of the hyperscalers. All we need is an account there, and that then frees up that data. So now I can use it across any one of them. And now my developers really do get that sense of where can I take this. And it usually does drive a lot of excitement across the organization when those developers start to see that potential. So let's look at a real life example. So this is a data analytics example here. And on my picture on the right-hand side at the bottom there, that would be where the faction volume sits. And you can see it says the faction CCV, and that's our cloud control volume. And that's where the data would be consolidated. Then there's this middle layer there, that number 2, that's the network connections layer. And you can see the different components in here, whether it's over Azure or AWS, depending on what I've got. And then that network layer connects up into the hyperscaler and the application that I have. So in this one, I've chosen Databricks, and that's a cloud-native, cloud-born type of analytics tool. So I don't have to worry about the refactoring of the applications. That's already done by that company. But I could quickly stand up those environments and pull them down and use the same data set across. So I love this picture. This one usually tends to resonate pretty well with folks. And then on the left-hand side of that, bottom left, you'll see this is the GUI piece that we have, and that's the demo I have next. So let's get to the demo. I can show you guys what that looks like. So here I've logged in. I've got 2 different volumes, and in these volumes, you can see the sizes and stuff, and the size of the line indicates the performance from it. On the right-hand side, they're both healthy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to add an additional connection. So right now they're just connected to Azure. So we're going to take that Nova 2 and we're going to connect it up into AWS. So we're going to go ahead and click this to make sure that the demo keeps going. It looks like it might have paused there on me. Did the demo pause?
No, it's still going. It just popped up.
Is it still going? Okay. Thank you. So what's going to happen here, depending on when it maybe it's my screen, but I will go through and create another connection. So at the top, I would say select another connection. I'm going to click AWS. From that, I would type in my account information. So the account ID. I would select the performance level I want for that volume. And in this case, I selected a 10 gig connection. And from that, then I was able to click OK, next, do a quick verify, and I've now got that Nova 2 volume connected to both Azure and AWS. So I didn't have to mess with anything else. I didn't have all these other, big process problems and stuff like that. You can imagine if I had a set of users out there that wanted to experiment with a different hyperscaler, they could quickly come in. I could set that up for them and deliver them that connection within minutes. So on my side, the demo did stop, so I'm going to go ahead and hit next and assume that it ran through. So why are organizations moving to this multi-cloud strategy? And it really does boil down to these simple things. It is to avoid that vendor lock-in, right? They don't want to feel like that everything they do has to be locked on Azure or AWS, and they don't have that freedom to move wherever they want. It's about overcoming that data gravity. The data gravity really relates back to the silo of information, a silo of data where I cannot get out of that without having significant egress fees. I can optimize the workloads in the cloud. I mean, I can really go out and choose which ones I want. I can elevate that application performance by picking which hyperscaler delivers the appropriate level of compute for the tasks that I want to do. I can curb some of that shadow IT. So again, there's a lot of folks out there that want to do their own thing. I can enable that now. I can help them use that shadow IT, but control my expenses as well, and sort of help them understand that's going to have a negative impact on the company by them going off and doing their own things. This does a big thing with disaster recovery and stuff again, because now I'm able to bring all that data together in one spot. And by consolidating that, I only have to worry about one place where I'm doing my disaster recovery type of management activities, as well as meeting any of those regulatory compliance parts. So it's really about that. I get the choice. I can keep my costs in check. I get collaboration across my environment, and my business is going to see a better results by quicker time to insights. So I hope this helped a lot today. From a next steps perspective, I wanted to just call out, hey, big piece when you're looking at moving to the cloud or doing these types of environment changes, get a strategy, figure out what it is that I'm trying to achieve, and make sure you get those stakeholders to buy into it. And really look at creating that, or look at creating a cloud center of excellence where you can look at what are the obstacles we're going to have. Do we have applications that are cloud enabled, or are they ready to move into the cloud? What other types of things am I going to run into? So if we can be of any help, we've got a lot of expertise at Faction. I've got the website and the contact information over there. More than happy to help in any way we can, and I hope the sessions you guys are sitting in today you find valuable. I think these are awesome opportunities to get out and learn. You know, from an IT perspective, you've got a lot on your plate, and I know that you know, all of these different companies are always talking about everything they're bringing to market, and it's sometimes overwhelming. And so if we can help simplify some of that and make some of this go away, we'd love to be able to be a partner with you. So thank you very much. I'll hand the mic back to you guys.
Okay, yeah, super. And you have time for a couple of questions?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know where we were on the time frame. So if we do, I'd love to have a couple. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got time for a question or two. So great presentation, and thanks for the demo too. And while we check out the questions here that we have, I did want to put up the poll about additional information that you'd like on Faction. But a quick one here. They're asking, how do you connect to the hyperscalers?
Yeah, so that was done in is done in our fix. So that's the Faction Internetwork Exchange, and that's where the patents we have primarily are focused around. And it's the technology that we've developed that said we're going to be able to quickly connect the volumes that were created on the Faction data stores out to those individual hyperscalers. And I'd mentioned it that we are cloud adjacent, which means that we are in the same data facilities that the hyperscalers are in. And when we do this, we're able to deliver performance at the millisecond level. So from a performance perspective, it's just as quick or quicker sometimes than even the hyperscalers are able to deliver. So a lot of it boils down to the different storage technologies that are being used, and that's how we do it is through that internet exchange. And that's kind of what I was trying to show in the demo, the ease of how quickly you can go through and select and change that. And you can do that on the fly. If you need to add or move different performance around, you can quickly do that as well.
Okay. Hey, a question here from Jeffrey. Does Faction automatically map to the cheapest cloud? Is that a setting that is available or that the customers use?
Great question. And no, we do not. We don't have necessarily that knowledge to know what you're doing. So when that mapping to the cloud would be you'd have to have that knowledge as what is the compute pieces that you're looking for. One thing we do like to tout, I didn't have it in this demo, but it would be part of the data sheets and stuff like that, is you can take advantage of what is in the industry called like the spot instances, where a hyperscaler might be selling some excess compute that they have. It's not always available. Most time it is, but they'll sell compute for smaller, shorter time frames, and it's quite frankly, it's hard to take advantage of unless you're already part of that hyperscaler. With this type of a solution, you're able to say, oh, I'm going to just take that data set, connect it up to that spot instance, and I can run this next job or two and get it done quickly without having to have all this other expenses there. But no, we don't specifically target the cheapest cloud. It is something that I've looked into as a product manager to see what I could do to partner with somebody that does those types of things. But the more I've looked into it, it's pretty hard because of the fact that you have to have so much information around the compute aspects that you're looking for. So that's right. Sort of the barrier with that right now.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that spot instance, it sounds like a really nice solution for people who have that that scenario, and they can definitely take advantage of it. Well, great. Well, it looks like we're running out of time, Mike, but I do just want to point out that you've provided a great, multi-cloud infographic in the handout section, and I'll just briefly pop up that next step slide as well, which had Mike's contact info on there as well. But thanks so much for coming on and bringing us up to speed on Faction.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And again, I hope you guys have a great day. I think these are great opportunities to get a lot of the different stuff going on in the industry from a lot of different companies. So thank you guys for hosting.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks again for participating. All right.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to the next prize drawing. So the winner of our next $500 Amazon gift card is Jeremy Trout from Colorado. And the winner of our fourth grand prize, the Microsoft Surface Laptop 4, is Michael Strawn from Utah. So congratulations to Jeremy and Michael. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes. And now it's time for our next presentation in the Cloud Strategies Megacast, and our next session comes from Strong DM. And I'm delighted to announce our speaker for this one. It's Tim Prendergast, who is Chief Executive Officer of Strong DM. So, Tim, thanks for being here, and take it away.
It's great to be here at today's Megacast. My name is Tim Prendergast, and I'm the CEO here at Strong DM. I'm excited to connect with our audience today and share a bit about access challenges in the cloud and how we can rethink what a truly distributed world should look like in the cloud era of tomorrow. I love the title of today's talk because all of us old cadre technologists have felt this way at least once in our career. Get off my cloud, you varmints. Pardon me. As I was saying, this agenda may not look very meaty, but there's a lot to actually discuss in these topics. As with all great stories, you start at the beginning. If you look back at the early days of cloud, the entire industry swarmed around the concept of automating deployment and automated management of resources and fleets as guiding North Stars to reach for. The goal was, of course, to not only increase reliability and usability of the cloud, but to get humans out of the environment. Get off my cloud, you varmints. But then we shifted towards automating security as the next era in cloud, where systems and companies popped up around how we find the holes in our security strategy and how we can close them before attackers can exploit them. So it's hugely relevant and still is to this day for companies that have adopted highly elastic infrastructure strategies. Stay off my cloud, you varmints. Now this next era is going to be defined by how we get people access to these borderless, highly dynamic, highly automated infrastructures. What good is a super cool stack if nobody can use it? And you know what I'm going to say next, right? Get on my cloud, you lovely humans who I adore. Why is this next era the era of access? How do we make the cloud more accessible, not less accessible as it matures in our organization? To answer these questions, we're going to need to look at the state of the union. So let's break down the 5 core complications in today's modern marketplace. Your infrastructure is now everywhere. You have resources in Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Azure, and potentially other cloud providers as well. You may or may not have data centers, and if you do, they're likely distributed around the globe near your users and offices and in seismically safe regions. And these environments are getting more complex by the year. They're not getting less complex like technology commonly does. It's become difficult, if not impossible, to know who has access to what and how they get there consistently. This creates a huge burden on your technical staff because they have to mentally map the world and tens, hundreds, or thousands of infrastructure relationships just to do their job. Second, you have people that are now everywhere. The post-pandemic world's proven that remote work is not only viable, but more efficient and not less efficient as previously thought. And it makes total sense. People aren't getting in cars, on trains, or riding their bicycle to work. That could save you anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours a day not commuting. And that time can be reinvested into the work product that is being output by your employees. It drives great business outcomes. Since people can now work for anyone and anywhere, employee happiness and job satisfaction are the new #1 priority for executives at leading companies. So shouldn't we be trying to make those people's lives easier and more efficient as we evolve in the cloud? Third, your security assertions need updating. This is a kind of standard statement we see in the industry, and it's always repeated every year, but we all agree that compliance is increasing in complexity and is driving the security industry forward. Data is becoming more valuable than ever, and it necessitates the protections that we haven't historically given it. And your investment in identity is continuing to increase. So our security model is not only shifting, but it's shifting closer to our end users. With all of this, the security perimeter was vaporized. And so you no longer have the ability to assume that your trust zone is the 4 walls of your building where all your employees work, because they're not necessarily going to be in there anymore. There's also a fourth item here that I want to talk about. The historical strategy we've all had of giving everyone keys to the kingdom and hoping they do the right thing with them. That's potentially the biggest piece of technical debt, and it's the one that you have full control over. If you ask yourself, how many shared database credentials are in our organization? How many people have shared logins to resources and they use them because it's the least path of resistance to get their job done? How do we find ourselves in this situation? I think if you ask that question to modern legal teams, they're going to tell you, we don't know, but we do know it's a huge liability on the business. Fifth, managing access in these dynamic environments is not only complicated, but frankly, a nightmare for many organizations. This last one really sticks with me, and here's why. We asked a few hundred DevOps and security teams to talk to us about managing access and point to where it hurts most. Shouldn't be surprising. Cloud providers and accounts are notoriously difficult to manage, especially if you have 2 or more, or potentially all of them in your environment. They don't have an identity system that works seamlessly with each other, and there's no incentive for them to work together, so it's unlikely to be coming in the future. And your team still wants to use the best parts of each cloud provider, so they're not going to go away, and you're not going to be able to consolidate them effectively. A close tie for second was both database access and data center and on-prem server access, and sometimes they're one and the same. But let's split them out for a moment. In database access, the database companies, much like the cloud providers, aren't incentivized to work together, so they don't, and they're not aligned on authentication strategies. They tend to believe it's a zero-sum game, and we're going to get all of your data and all of your workloads, or none of them. But reality is you're going to have multiple different data stores for different reasons in your environment. Data centers and on-prem server environments, often overlooked because a lot of teams are now cloud native and don't use them, but there's plenty of teams that have legacy components that they can never migrate out of the data center. So they have to manage it for a long period of time or forever. And those of you that don't believe that, I have one word for you: mainframes. VPNs, we all know the pains VPNs introduced to our lives, especially in the post-pandemic world. They frankly complicate the situation by making people think about where they are and where the resource they need to get to is located. That means make all your employees network topology experts, which is totally unnecessary in today's world. They can also introduce latency and protocol challenges in certain workflows, and they push that burden of support onto your IT team who's already overworked. And finally, Kubernetes, who doesn't play by any of these rules, and it's beloved by IT teams, developers, and ops teams. So we're going to have to live with it, and we're going to have to find ways to integrate it to our access strategy in the future. So in this world of disparate infrastructure providers, how do you define a strategy that streamlines your team's access to this complex nest of resources? Well, to answer that, let's talk about some new access strategies that are going to make life better for your teams across the organization. First, defining access as code. This one seems obvious. DevOps teams have already adopted the philosophy that infrastructure can be treated as code and described as code, but provisioning access for employees to that infrastructure has historically been highly manual, if not entirely so. If you can describe your infrastructure as code, why not describe how people access it as code? Defining access grants and roles through things like APIs and dynamic rules is much more natural feeling for these teams. And it's way more flexible than legacy point and click UIs and interfaces. We have a native Terraform provider that makes it easy to deploy not only StrongDM's core components to gateways, but also grant and revoke access as resources are emerging and sunsetting in your infrastructure. The infrastructure as code mantra finally meets its peer, access as code. Embracing borderless systems is another strategy. It means you can't or shouldn't care where a system is in order to work with it. That means geographically and topologically in your network. You should only know that if you can see it, you can access it. And if you can access it, you should be automatically in the least permissioned role available to you by design. If you need more permission, you can trigger that elevation, which leads me to putting people first in access, not like the legacy manual process of granting access. So what's people first access? It's pure, unadulterated access to the things an individual needs to do their job and none of the things they don't. It means self-service models for requesting and elevating permissions with the right work justifications. And it means the most natural experience, working with infrastructure in an organic way, like it's almost local to your workstation. And we didn't forget about you admins as people too. All the security you had before and a lot of stuff you wish you had is now available to you and totally invisible to the end user. This does lead to the promised land where security and usability are living in harmony and not conflict. So how do we turn this otherwise complicated moment into a huge opportunity for your business? Let's ask some people what the ideal scenario for access in the modern cloud would be. Well, we've already done that for you. And here's a picture painted for us by a few hundred engineers when asked this question. Technology teams, which tend to be your biggest infrastructure consumers, should not need to master the company's network and network topology to work with infrastructure. There's no need to build a labyrinth when a hallway to move people from point A to point B is perfectly sufficient. If you have a mythical user, Tim, who needs to get on a database, it doesn't matter if Tim is in Tokyo, Paris, a Starbucks in Seattle, or on a go-go Wi-Fi connection on an airplane at 30,000 feet. Tim should not have to change his or her behavior to connect to a resource based on where they are. As long as he or she is authenticated and authorized, there's one singular motion they should use to connect to infrastructure and work with it. Second, we should change the way we think about our users being exposed to attackers. We should have never put them in the position to have the keys to the kingdom and thus become targets for hackers. So let's design a world where no user needs to have the credentials, keys, certs, or passwords to our servers, databases, or infrastructure. It makes total sense. Let's leverage the existing identity investment we're making and use it to power both web applications and infrastructure access, not one or the other. You might need a little help from a system to do this, but I know one you might like. We should also leverage existing investments in automation like Terraform as the foundational blocks for facilitating new capabilities like access as code. We should also automatically know when someone connects to a system, see exactly what they did, and retain that session for compliance reasons. It's a requirement, no longer a luxury. Next, we've got to determine how we achieve all of this. And thankfully, we've made that super easy because we're StrongDM. We have built what the next era of cloud adoption needs, brilliant access that's not only a joy to use, but super easy to set up. And we made it intentionally easy for both the end user and the administrator. Our protocol aware proxy mesh builds the foundation on which your users are going to build direct, tailored relationships with the infrastructure they use to do their job. That relationship's presented as an inventory of systems they can access, and it will grow and change as the technologist's job changes. And when it's time for that technologist to move on, all that access is instantly removed as fast as it was granted. For the first time in security, ease of use and the guarantee of security are in perfect balance. This is the way. I'd like to take a moment and hand it over to my colleague Cameron, a senior solutions architect here at StrongDM, who's going to show you how the same gestures you use to set up infrastructure can connect your people and your borderless stack through StrongDM. In under 5 minutes, he's going to show you how you can extend the StrongDM platform to add additional gateways, register new resources on the platform, in this case, Kubernetes clusters, and see his personal inventory of infrastructure update in real time and allow him to connect and work with the resources he needs to do his job right. Cameron, if you wouldn't mind taking over now.
Good afternoon. This is Cameron with StrongDM, and today we're going to be looking at how to onboard new infrastructure to the StrongDM platform using our Terraform provider. We'll also be taking a look at how easy it is to access the new infrastructure once it's been onboarded. So let's go ahead and get things started. Now, while our apply kicks off, let's go ahead and look in the StrongDM platform. We can see that I have one gateway and one cluster. The Terraform is going to add an additional gateway for some redundancy and another EKS cluster. We should even start to already see the second cluster coming online. Also, we link out to our Terraform documentation directly from the UI. It's all available to you through our GitHub with instructions on how to use it. So feel free to take these examples and use them as stepping stones for your own implementation. Now let's take a quick look at the code. Here you can see I'm creating a new gateway and another EKS cluster. I can easily add to this by uncommenting the objects that meet my needs. Now for the demo, I've pre-created the EKS cluster in AWS just due to the time that it takes to be created, which is why we already saw it beginning to be onboarded. But all other resources like the EC2 instance for the gateway are being built and everything is going to be onboarded into the StrongDM. So let's take a look at the user experience. Here I am logged into our client. I can easily view the infrastructure my administrators have given me access to. Right now, that's the EKS clusters in AWS, including the one that we just onboarded, as well as a MySQL and an SSH target. Now, anytime my admins onboard a new cluster, provided I have the required role, I instantly have access, decreasing the time to value for that asset. Now, at this point, I have access, but I'm not actually connected to anything. I can connect via the client by simply clicking on the target, and a lightning bolt indicates that the connection is good. I can also connect via the command line using the SDM connect command. The next thing I need to do is to create my config file with the cluster contexts. I can either do this in the client by choosing update kubectl config, or I can do it by the command line by simply running the command sdm cates update-config. As you can see, all of my currently available targets are populated, and it sets the current context to that instance I just connected to. Now, currently, I don't have any pods running. So let's go ahead and deploy a new pod. I have a YAML file with a simple config for an Nginx pod. I can deploy that easily, just like it was any other EKS or Kubernetes cluster. Now, let's go ahead and deploy the pod to the new cluster. I simply need to connect, change my context, and deploy my pod. It's as simple as that. Now our Terraform should be finished, and if we look at the platform, we can see the new objects that have been created. We have, of course, our additional EKS cluster, and we have our second gateway for that redundancy. So as you can see, not only is it quick and easy to create and onboard new resources into your organization using our supported automation tools, you're also providing your engineers with a seamless, non-obstructive, native user experience across all platforms. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the demo, Cameron, and great presentation there from Tim Prendergast. And yeah, and Tim, while we leave this poll up here, let's get into some audience questions. So what additional types of infrastructure do you support?
So StrongDM has a philosophy that kind of matches how people operate their business. We want to support all the infrastructure that you depend on, and that's our commitment to customers. So we support over 90 protocols for protocol and identity aware connectivity between technical personas and the infrastructure that need to do their job. So we support everything from all the modern cloud databases and on-prem databases to SSH and RDP endpoints and servers, Kubernetes, cloud command lines for AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, as well as some things that people may not traditionally think of as common infrastructure. But databases as old as something like a DB2 that are still on-prem and the core part of someone's infrastructure, we've built protocol support for. And as we meet more interesting use cases at customers, we're always excited to build new support, because what good is a form of access and single sign-on if you can't really use one thing to authenticate and connect to all of your resources, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. 90 protocols. That's a lot. That's a great list. Next question here. They're asking, are accounts created on the infrastructure? Or is it on your infrastructure? How does that happen?
Correct. The best way to think about that is we want to leverage the investment that companies have made in their identity provider. So if you have an IDP like an Azure AD, or you're using something like Okta for SSO, we're leveraging that for the user side of identity and saying, this is Tim and he's in this group and he can connect to these resources with this different set of role accounts. Then on your infrastructure, our technology is not actually reaching in and manipulating any of your endpoints. We're 100% agentless, and so we can deploy and scale really easily into existing environments. And we will support whatever kind of credentialing strategy that is already in place on your infrastructure. The key thing to note, though, is one of the huge security benefits of the technology is removing usernames, passwords, credentials, shared IAM keys, shared accounts, SSL certs. All that leaves user land. So your users no longer have any credential to worry about getting phished or stolen or accidentally checked into GitHub. The system abstracts that away and handles it in the back end. And we actually have a really intelligent way to integrate into existing Vault solutions. So if you're a fan of HashiCorp Vault or AWS Secrets Manager or one of the popular cloud secret stores, we tie in and we'll actually lease the credential out of that secret store and complete the connection transparently to the user. So you don't have to have our platform creating any credentials or having a bifurcated credential strategy. We are very much a choose-your-own-adventure kind of company, and we want to adapt around the strategy you've already decided on for your business.
Smart, great. So I think the poll has sort of settled down, and what we're seeing here on this, in this question about how long does it typically take for an access request to be routed, approved, and granted. A huge number, 29% are saying days, 36% hours, and then the other maybe 34% are minutes and seconds, which is, ideal. Is that about what you typically see, from audiences when you poll?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common spread, and honestly, it's different by team, right? So some teams are really sophisticated, but they're part of a larger organization that may be less sophisticated in various parts of technology. None of us all sprung up overnight with our full tech stack ready to go and support $1 billion business. It definitely evolves over time, and so as strategy evolves, it's important to recognize that there are pockets of the business that are really slow and pockets that are really fast. But I think that is, pretty much on par with what we see in the marketplace today.
Tremendous. Okay. And I have put up another poll here. This is the one about additional information that you'd like about the Strong DM solution. So if everybody could fill that out, we'd greatly appreciate it. And back to audience questions. Tim, what are the audit capabilities for the queries?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. So if you can think about security assertions as transparent to the user, because of the architecture of the product, our product's actually auditing all the semantics of the protocols at the packet level, right? So we actually can introspect what database queries are being run against your infrastructure and how many rows are returned. But in the audit data, we'll show you the query being run interleaved in the kind of a real-time Twitter feed of your data infrastructure being interacted with by people and systems. But we won't show you the actual data being returned. We'll just tell you how much data and how many rows are coming back. So that's a very useful way to not only get security insights, but stay compliant and not be opening your data surface area up to third-party systems. At the same time, we can replay real-time text-based SSH sessions. We can replay full moving video of RDP, so you can derive things like someone logged into a Windows server and they moved the mouse somewhere, paused, went down, opened Task Manager, killed all the security tools, and then went and downloaded some malicious software. And we can also introspect things like kubectl commands showing not only what people were doing and working with the pods over the command line, but also capture the interactive sessions inside of containers. So there's a lot of visibility and observability you're getting that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, especially in highly dynamic infrastructures. Not only knowing what people did when the system or component was up and online, but retaining that session data even after that resource is gone because it was ephemeral is really important to security strategies in modern businesses.
Good stuff. Okay. Hey, it looks like we're running low on time here, Tim, but if somebody wants to get started with StrongDM or find out more, what do you recommend?
Yeah, there's two ways to do it. We're very much a fan of the old Choose Your Own Adventure books. You can go to strongdm.com and you can launch a free 2-week trial that's fully featured and jump in with our fantastic documentation and stand it up on your own. You're also welcome to connect with us on our website via the chat feature or reach out to our sales team and get a curated demo and dive deeper. We are happy to engage you wherever you are in your journey, but we think there's something really important here for everyone to look at, and that's how do you make the lives of your technical teams that are building your user experiences easier and safer in today's increasingly complex world, and StrongDM is a fantastic way to leverage your existing investments and really drive some value into the business and just improve the everyday lives of your technical coworkers.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for coming on and bringing us up to speed on StrongDM and the issues that you're addressing. These are really important.
Yep. Thank you very much, and shout out to those already customers on the poll. We love you guys, and we can't wait to hear from you after this.
All right, great. Okay, and now we've come to our final prize drawing of the event. And the winner of the last $500 Amazon gift card is James Rose from Texas. And the winner of our 5th grand prize of a Microsoft Surface Laptop 4 is Ryan Doman from Hawaii. So congratulations to James, to Ryan, and to all of our winners today. And I will just take a second here to post that winners list in the chat. So give me one moment. While I pop that in there. Okay, let's put the winners list up. And as we're winding down today's event, I'd just like to take this opportunity to recommend Actual Tech Media's 10 on Tech podcast, which is a great way to get up to speed on latest tech topics in a short amount of time. You can download it or play it from wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you've been watching the Megacast today and thinking your company's solutions could have been part of this lineup, we'd love to hear from you and help you get involved in our upcoming events, which run all year. So just email us at that connect@actualtechmedia.com address, and we can work together on future events. Speaking of upcoming events, our very next event is next Wednesday, and the topic is ransomware. We've got a great keynote interview planned with ransomware expert Alan Liska, along with vitally important presentations from all the companies that you see here. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together such informative presentations and demos and offering their answers and insights during the Q&A. I also want to thank all of our participants for making this event possible. That was Rubrik, Veeam, Incorta, Nutanix, Duo, Faction, and StrongDM. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's Megacast from Actual Tech Media and for all of your great questions. That concludes today's event. We'll see you next time.